Preparing to be live. Oh, don't start that crap. Live. Preparing to. Did I go live on the Friday night hangout or my channel? Look, there we go.
You're there.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Friday 3D Printing Community Hangout. I know we've been off on a little bit of a short hiatus in between streams, but we are back again tonight. Everybody is secluded to their homes because, of course, the coronavirus is running wild throughout the world. So tonight we are inviting everybody to join us and hang out while Garrett from ChaosCoreTech and Chelsea, his lovely, wonderful wife, helps out teaching us a little bit about ZBrush. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of jump into things tonight and bear with us as we figure it out, because this is the first time we're doing a model along live on F3D PCH. What you'll end up seeing is Garrett's going to take up the full screen and be able to do screen share and all that stuff, and guide us through, while Mike and myself, as well as anybody who's in the audience who wants to, will be able to join in and model right along with us in ZBrush. Garrett, when you do your intro, let everybody know which version of ZBrush you're using. Like, I'm using 2018. Hopefully that is up to, I don't know if you're using 19 or what you're using. But let everybody know what version you're using so that we can kind of judge the differences between the versions, or people know they have to look somewhere different. So let's go ahead and go right into intros. Mike, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi there. I'm Mike, also known as NLTMW.
You're muted, Mike.
I am not intentionally muted. I'm hating technology.
Oh, wait. No, he's not. That's me.
No, I'm not.
I was gonna say, I hear you.
That was me. I had my volume muted. My apologies. Go ahead, Mike. Try that again.
Can I talk now?
All right. I'm Mike, also known as NLTMW, Never Let the Machines Win. And I'm going to try to knock the rust off my really low, almost non-existent ZBrush skills, because I haven't used this much in the last 6 months or so. So I'm looking forward to tonight and see how things go. Next.
All right. Garrett, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Garrett. I run the channel ChaosCoreTech on YouTube, and not on screen, but just off screen. You can hear her voice as Chelsea, my wife, who also does 3D modeling and painting and all sorts of good stuff like that. Yeah. Do you want me to go over like my modeling credentials, I suppose?
Sure. Yeah, tell us, and be sure to include what you guys do on Patreon as well.
Oh yeah, most of our models we share on Patreon. Like our original models we share over there, instead of the, if we ever do like copyrighted characters, we usually give those away for free because they are not our characters. So if you are interested in any of that, you can check us out on Patreon. It's just ChaosCoreTech over there. I believe it's patreon.com/ChaosCoreTech. We've got some really fun models up there.
Oh, and I've got like 3 of them coming ASAP.
Yeah, always more coming.
Yeah, you guys have been very busy cranking out models here as of late.
Yep.
So, Garrett, before we get started, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you started with modeling, what got you into modeling to begin with, because I'm not exactly sure that it was 3D printing necessarily. So you know, tell everybody what your background is there.
Sure. So, I don't know, from like as early as I can remember, I've always loved video games. And pretty much from that age, I knew that I wanted to make video games. and that pretty much hasn't stopped to this day. So that's kind of what led me to 3D modeling. But as most people who have tried 3D modeling know, it's kind of a steep learning curve, especially when no one's showing you, like if you're just kind of trying to figure it out on your own. So I don't know, in the late, probably like 2008 to 2010, somewhere in there, I was really, well, maybe even a couple years before that, I got like a book, and that's how long ago it was. I got a book that that was about like game development, and it came with a trial for the software called Milkshape 3D, and it was like a very simple box modeling software, and I messed around. I made like a weird little boxy character there and like a couple other things. Like I think I made a Pikachu back then. But I wouldn't say I like grasped it. I was more like muddling through it.
When did you make the portal cube?
I didn't.
I thought you did.
No, that was my first 3D print. I didn't model it though.
Oh.
I just found it.
News to me.
Oh yeah, no, that was a Thingiverse, right? So then from there, I realized that Milkshape 3D probably wasn't going to get me where I needed to go. And I think my trial was up for it and I didn't have money to spend on it. So that led me to Blender, which was like a free 3D modeling program. But back in those days, it was way more complicated than it is today. And I tried and just utterly failed to grasp it. So I stopped trying for, I don't know, a decade close to. And then I got sort of into electronics. This was probably like 8 years later. And learning, I wanted to make little robots and stuff like that. That led me to 3D printing because you can 3D print little things for robots and stuff like that. And then at that point, I decided to get a 3D printer and I tried out, well, first of all, I started with OpenSCAD, which is like, it's a 3D modeling software, but it's more, you like write code that creates the 3D object, I suppose. And I'm a programmer as my day job, so that's where I started out. And then from there, I went to Tinkercad, and I basically did as much as I could in Tinkercad until I started wanting to do some organic stuff and couldn't really there. Went over to Fusion 360, stayed there for a year and a half or so, and then hit the limits of that to do what I wanted to do. And then from there, I jumped to ZBrush, and I've been in ZBrush for 2 years.
Yeah.
So
about 2 years.
Yep. And I've made all sorts of weird little things, mostly cartoon characters or, just characters from pop culture and TV, movies, video games, that type of stuff. And then more recently started making some original characters because wanted to flex a creative muscle a little bit.
And you've been starting to play with Blender a little bit more as well. Correct.
Yes, I have gotten back into Blender, which is way more user-friendly now. I would actually argue it's more user-friendly than ZBrush by a long stretch.
Yeah.
So
I would say the only reason that I still use ZBrush is because
that's what we learned. Yeah.
And I don't want to try to learn something else.
Yeah.
I already know this and have it.
And Blender's still free, which is phenomenal. And I don't know how they do it, but it is an amazing piece of software.
Yeah, it's definitely a workhorse.
Yeah,
it's free. It's amazing what you can do with it.
Yep.
So another thing before we get started, what kind of hardware do you use for 3D modeling? So we touched base on the softwares that you've used. What kind of hardware have you used? What do you use currently? And what do you like or what you use now versus what you've used in the past?
Sure. Is that addressed to me or Mike first?
We'll let you go with that first, Chelsea, and then we'll get to Mike too and see what Mike uses as well.
Okay. So as far as computer, I don't, well, I've never really had a good computer before, because I don't have the money to have a good computer. Lowly peasant console gamer over here. But the current computer that I am running, I've actually had for 5 years, and it was not a good computer back then either. So, and this is the best computer I've ever had. So I don't know, it's running like a Core i3 processor and something like a GeForce 750, 770, something like that. I'm not super certain, but not good. It has trouble running ZBrush, and like I tried, I do some things in Maya, and it pretty much can't do Maya. So as far as computer, you don't need a lot to be able to run these programs. It's just you start to run into some issues once you get up into the millions of polygons. It can kind of bog down your system.
Your drawing tablet.
Yeah, I was getting to that. So next, I use a well, I've used two different drawing tablets before, and if you don't know what those are, it's basically a computer screen that you can draw on with a specific pen. And both of the ones I've had have been Huion brand, and the original one that I had was it was not a super expensive one. It was it was very clunky, and like the glass on the front of it is really thick, so if you're not looking at the right angle, you like your cursor gets off, because the glass is so thick. And yeah, it's just the viewing angle is horrible on it too. But now I'm using this was Huion. I believe it's a Canvas Pro 13, something like that.
Yeah.
And I just like it because I like being able to see where I'm like putting my pen and using it, but these things are absolutely not necessary. ZBrush, you do need some sort of pressure sensitivity, but you can use
like the what, $40.
Yeah, there's like $40, $50 little they're little tablets. They don't have the screen on them, but they have a pen, and you basically like look at your computer screen while you're drawing on it. And it sounds like it'd be kind of weird, but you get used to it really fast, and those work just fine. If you're just starting ZBrush and looking to do this today, you will be able to do most of it if you don't have one of those pen tablets. But if you're going to keep using programs like this, I would definitely recommend getting one of those tablets. My mic is popping?
Yeah.
I do not know what to do about that.
You might try unplugging it and plugging it back in, Garrett. So
okay.
The way that way. Sometimes that clears it up. So you also, I know you at one point you had a 3D mouse. Do you still continue to utilize your 3D mouse as well?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's actually much better.
Okay, good. Yes, well, I don't use it as much anymore. I did use it for quite a bit of time when I was doing Fusion 360 stuff. The 3D mouse doesn't work with ZBrush, well, I think it actually will work with Maya. I'm unsure if it works with Blender. I haven't tried it. But yeah, it flat out won't work with ZBrush.
Okay.
But yeah, if you're using Fusion, I had I'm trying to think of the brand. Do you remember? Oh, 3D Connection.
Yeah.
And I think I was using the Space Mouse to begin with, and then there was like a Space Navigator that's like the bigger one. They sent me that one. And yeah, if you can use those if you're doing CAD type stuff, it's super fun because you can move the 3D model around super quickly, and it's very easy to navigate.
Cool.
But not necessary if you don't have one.
And does Chelsea use all the same hardware then when she's modeling, or did she use something different?
I can't hear anybody. Is anyone talking?
Can you hear me? Hey, Garrett.
Mike?
I'm still here.
Anybody?
We can hear you.
Oh, the stream's mine now, guys.
Okay.
Can anyone in the chat hear me?
Nap time.
It's delayed, so you're still.
It's a long delay to YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube's got a long delay. Crap, what the heck's going on now?
Testing.
Hello?
Seems to have gone dark.
I know. Just nobody?
One of the settings in Zoom and check.
Matt says, I can hear you. You can't hear us. Should I leave the meeting and come back?
All right. Garrett's going to leave and come back.
I think it did. Oh, to someone for sure.
Yeah.
Garrett's going to leave and come back.
Yeah. Okay. I'll. Hello. What's up? I'll leave and come back.
It would not be a Friday night hangout if we didn't have technical issues.
Yep. Want me to roll while he's coming back?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. So what hardware do you utilize for modeling?
Okay. My modeling machine is a MacBook Pro, a newer one, thanks to my daytime job. And before that, I used another Mac, so I guess it's the same story. And it's an i7. It's got enough RAM to work fine. But tonight, I chose to offload some of its load and set up an old Lenovo Yoga laptop with running XSplit and USB camera into it so I could do the picture-in-picture thing. And it seems to be okay so far. Now that I've said that, it'll happen. But and I could touch wood. It's right in front of me, but I didn't think quick enough, so oh well. And then I kind of took a similar path in drawing tablets as Garrett did, I guess, because we did it around the same time. My first one was I bought ZBrush Core, the light version of ZBrush, and it the package I did came with a Wacom tablet, and I used that for quite a while. And yes, you do get used to the eye-hand coordination thing. I think Garrett, being a good gamer, really helps with that. And for him, didn't work for me because I suck at gaming too. And so then I think after that, anyways, now I've got the canvas drawn the screen style, and yeah, it's way easier, way better for Photoshop and Illustrator and things like that too, because you can actually connect exactly where you're going. So for close zoomed in work, it's a lot better.
All right. Now, what software have you done 3D modeling in so far, Mike?
Oh man, I started back in the late 80s probably with Sculpt 3D and Lightwave on an Amiga. And then for a while, Videoscape. That was it. Videoscape and Sculpt 3D for the first ones. Then Videoscape kind of evolved into Lightwave on the Video Toaster, which to me was just a really expensive dongle for Lightwave. So I used to borrow a friend's Video Toaster machine, which at the time cost several $1,000s. And I hogged it most of the time. He hardly ever got to use it. And then evolved through different versions of stuff. Ended up, I used Rhino 3D for more mechanical things because it was more economical than anything else. And AutoCAD's 3D offerings have always sucked to me because they still come from a 2D drawing board background. They don't, I don't know. Anyways. And so then I ended up at ZBrush because I wanted to do something more organic than mechanical. My background's mechanical engineering technology. So of course I do IT stuff every day now because that makes sense. Nobody seems to do what they went to school for, but nobody I know anyways.
Oh, that's not.
Is Garrett back yet?
No, he's not back yet.
Uh-oh. You mean I got to dance some more? All right.
Well, that, or if you want, I can go over what I use.
You go for it. There you go.
So I apologize for not looking at the stream. Just bear with me a second. I'm trying to get Garrett through the technical issues and also post on Twitter at the same time about the stream. The unfortunate thing with the way I'm doing the streams right now, I can't post a link ahead of time at the moment. So anyhow, hardware wise, I am using a Wacom Intuos Pro Medium Small, Intuos Pro Small, which is one of Wacom's or Wacom or however you want to say its devices, using a pen, like Mike said, hand-eye coordination. I can't see on the tablet what I'm doing, but I can see it on the screen, and just the tablet basically mirrors the screen. Hardware for the computer, I actually normally playing with ZBrush. I'm using my laptop, which is a Core i5 with like 12 gigs of RAM. Nothing super special. But then I have my workhorse computer that I do the live streams from, and any real heavy duty modeling, not counting ZBrush. I am not a heavy duty modeler in ZBrush. But Fusion 360 is having a meeting ID. All right. I am. Give me 1 second here. As far as the desktop goes, I'm using a Core i7. Um, it's a what is it? Not power spec. I buy power desktop just off the shelf from Best Buy, one of their gaming computers. Um, that's what I use as far as hardware goes. So it's a gaming computer. I bought it specifically so that I could do heavier duty modeling, and it works really well. Give me 1 second here. I got to blast a message over to Garrett. Something changed. Oh, what the heck? Joe Mike's trying to kill the chat, kill the stream. All right, trying to get Garrett back in here again.
Yeah, I sent him a link too.
Did you? I just sent him I copied the invite again and sent it to him. I wonder if that's why he lost audio. Oh, there we go. We got his name. That's a start. There's pitch.
Hello?
Can you hear us now, Garrett?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, and everything sounds great.
Okay, good.
Okay, don't touch any of it.
All right, I won't.
Okay, so Mike and I talked about the hardware that we use. I just kind of, I don't even remember the specs in mine. It's got an NVIDIA 680, I think, maybe. It was like the second to latest video card or third to latest video card that they released. So, but otherwise, it's got 16 gigs of RAM in it. So that's pretty much it. So it sounds like you can use ZBrush on a pretty sizable range of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
I haven't tried to use ZBrush on smaller machines. I got this because it's doing some more involved stuff in Fusion. So, all right. So, Garrett, if you're ready to go, we'll go ahead and get started with this thing now that your audio is working.
Okay.
All right.
Let me share my screen.
While Garrett's doing that, for those of you at home, if you want to model along with us in ZBrush, you're more than welcome to. What we're probably going to do is about 15 minutes before we wrap up, I'm going to have you guys post a screenshot of what you've modeled to Twitter and tag at F3DPCH and hashtag model along, or let's do hashtag 3D model along. Post a screenshot of what you've created as you've gone through the modeling along with Garrett. And then Mike and I will reshare our screens when we get to that point and show you what we've created. Mine might still be a circle and we're done. All right, Garrett, the floor is yours. Okay.
So I think pretty much every time I start something in ZBrush, I go for this Dynamesh sphere 128. And that's not, there's no reason behind that. That's just, I always start from a sphere, and most of the time I use Dynamesh. So, and that's one of the default things with ZBrush. Like, your start screen will look different here, but I just start there. And I don't know if you guys talked about this while I was away, but I'm going to be going pretty much from a complete beginner perspective. So forgive me if I'm saying things that you already know. And if I'm going too fast, stop me in the chat. And I know it's a little delayed, so I'll back up as need be to help people out.
Okay.
So first thing that I always do, well, first you got to pick what you're going to model. And I tweeted just to see if people had suggestions and things like that. And one of the suggestions I got, it was from Uncle Jesse, Ori, from Ori and the Blind Forest, or I believe there's a new one out, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, right there. It's a video game platformer. It's like, I think it's an indie game. It's super pretty, pretty fun. So, and I think it's a pretty simple character, not too complex. So I thought it'd be nice to model as a start. So once I pick what to model, I try to find reference images. This one's actually pretty good because it is such a simple character. We don't have to worry about if there's any designs that are on the backside that we can't see or different shapes and things like that. Like this one gives us pretty much what we need, but a lot of times you'll have to go around and find different pictures from different angles to kind of to give you the whole picture of what you're modeling. So finding references is key. And even if you're doing something completely original and not an existing character, finding references of things that are similar to what you want to do can really, really help. So, and for this, I always just use Google. Just look for images. It doesn't have to be anything fancy.
What's an average number of reference images that you would use, Garrett?
Oh, geez. I don't know. Well, for existing characters, depends on the complexity. Like this one, I'm probably just going to use this image, maybe a couple more as I get further into it. Need to figure out the face shape a little more. So this one will probably be 1 to 3, and then, but like, I don't know, some of the Transformers things where I need to like figure out the designs on the back and how different like little logos pop up. You know, I'll need closer to 10, and some of the like D&D stuff that I have been doing, it's like it's a type of character. It's like I'm not modeling one existing character, but it's a goblin. You know, it's like there's an existing look for goblins, but I'm not modeling one particular artist's vision of a goblin. I'm making my own. So with those, I'll look up, I don't know, probably 20 to 30 pieces of reference, just however many you need to
See all the angles and
yeah, or in because
logos or
it is different with an existing character. You're mostly trying to find all of the bits of detail that you need, but with an original character, it's mostly trying to pick inspiration. You know, finding art that you like and then taking bits and pieces from it without just completely stealing it. You know,
Right.
so yeah. So, but like for this one, I'm mostly going to use this image here.
Okay.
And
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
Okay, so if you've never really opened ZBrush before, this right-hand side thing, like ZBrush is a very non-intuitive program, so don't feel bad about not knowing how to do things because it can. You pretty much have to know how to do it. You can't just like feel your way through it. So over on the right here, there's a bunch of different words here, and you can click on them, and they expand to more options basically. And so like I've got the subtool one open right now, but if I go down here and click on geometry, that's gonna close the subtool one and open the geometry, and I personally hate that. So if you hold shift and click, you can open up more than one at a time. So like I've got the subtool and geometry open, and then say I needed initialize down here, I could hold shift, click it, it'll open, and shift, click it again, it'll close it. So that's, and then you just scroll by clicking off to the sides over here. It's kind of a weird way, like you can't use the scroll wheel just because ZBrush is a very weird program. But so yeah, just click off to the side, and you can do it on either side and drag up and down. And then underneath the subtool, I think these are called palettes. Underneath the subtool palette, you have basically all of the different shapes you're working with. And these things they can get pretty advanced, but just know for now, like this sphere I've got here. But if I were to add another, like a cylinder or something like that, see, it's a separate subtool. So now I've got a sphere and a cylinder and 2 different subtools here. So while I've got this one clicked, I can work on the cylinder here and move that and stuff like that. But if I click on the sphere, it doesn't do anything. So if I want to go back to moving the sphere, I have to click on this subtool up here, and then it gets a bit brighter in color to let you know that that is the active one you want to work on. And another thing to note is that your undos, because in most programs, Control Z is undo. And this one is the same, but it's a little bit more complicated than that because undos are subtool specific. So, like right there, I did all this to the sphere and then I undid it. But like, say I go back to the cylinder, move a whole bunch of stuff, and then I go back to the sphere and I want to undo what I did to the cylinder. If I start undoing here, it will only undo what I've done to the sphere because I'm on that subtool. So if I wanted to undo what I did to this, I would have to click back on the subtool and then start clicking undo. So that is, it just takes a little bit of getting used to, but it can be pretty nice because you can, you can have history on each of your objects that you can change later, even if you've done other things. So I'm just going to delete this
Hey, Garrett, while you're
cylinder for now.
Can you unplug your mic and plug it back in again? Sherry said it's popping again.
Sure.
Hopefully it doesn't mess up the speaker.
It's so weird. Can you move cable?
Let's see, select a microphone.
How is this?
That's better.
That's
Much
better? Okay.
Yep.
I think it might have been using my webcam microphone. I told it not to, but I think it did anyway. Okay.
Be aware that not everyone is following along in ZBrush, but so don't like go all crazy detail in ZBrush right now. I mean.
Okay,
Right.
yeah, and you guys are just gonna have to let me know if everybody's above the skill level. I can skip some of these more mundane things.
Okay. I mean, you already taught me something. The whole shift click on that side menu is awesome. I didn't know
Yeah, I use it all the time.
I didn't know how that either until you told me.
Yeah, I hate that it closes that. I'm sure there's some way you can tell ZBrush not to do that, but I guess I haven't dug that far into it.
So if after you shift click, I'm just curious, what happens if you click on one now?
It'll close everything else.
Oh, well, that's frustrating.
Yeah, so you have to keep shift clicking. I just always shift click, basically.
Yep.
As far as I know, that's what you got to do.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for just a second because I gotta move monitors back to the pen screen.
Okay. Mike's already getting a head start over there.
I'm failing.
Setting up my screens. Hold on. Apologies.
Hold on.
Hold on. Okay. Screen 3. I believe that is...
Chat's saying more info the better. We can rewatch to remember. Thanks.
Okay.
That was 3D printing and painting in the chat. And I'm kind of, Garrett, I know you guys do your own thing on Patreon as well with these tutorials. So, I mean, I don't want to cut into necessarily what you do on Patreon, just kind of giving everybody a taste of what you do.
No, that's all right. We might actually be closing that tier for the tutorials. I think that those videos might do better and be better on YouTube itself. So,
no, that's cool.
Yeah,
no, I mean,
we're still deciding that.
Cool for those who want to see it that aren't Patreon. I guess that is.
I mean, feel free to still join our Patreon.
Absolutely.
Right.
Models, but might give you free tutorials on YouTube.
Yeah. Well said, Chelsea.
So almost everything I do, I start from a sphere. Oh, sorry, my dog's crawling through a mess of wires under here. And I usually, like with this one, since the head is kind of the most prominent feature here, I'm just going to start with that. And it's pretty much just a sphere. I'm going to, maybe I'll go over the difference between like a mouse and this pen, just in case anyone's curious. So like right now I'm controlling with my mouse. And if you, let's see, I'll go to like a detail brush. So if I start doing this, you can see that, maybe that's not the best brush. Let's do the cloth brush. So you can see that I'm making indentions in there, but every indention that I make is like equally as deep. So if I start doing that, everything that I do here will be exactly that deep. And just like that, unless I change the pen size manually. But with the actual pencil, I can draw on it, and you can kind of, your pressure affects things. So like right there, I'm pressing harder. And if I let up just a bit, you can see I can kind of like trail off a little bit and get like a little bit nicer of a little bit softer of a touch on it. So like up there, I couldn't do that with a mouse without manually adjusting a bunch of things. But with the pen, it tracks your pressure sensitivity on there. So you can make more organic looking swooshes, I guess, swipes, whatever your brush is doing. So like I said, it's not 100% necessary, but it definitely helps way more than you would think.
All right.
Okay. So for his face, and maybe Chelsea, how do you do that spotlight thing?
You have to go to texture, like you want the picture on the screen.
Yeah, just so people can see it when I'm referencing it.
Texture, and then you have to like import the texture.
So like save it to my computer.
Yeah.
Hold please. I'm trying to get the image up for you guys so you can see it in my ZBrush. I have multiple monitors at home, so I just have it on a different monitor. But if you are using just one monitor, you can also have your reference image in ZBrush, so you can just refer to it there.
While Garrett's pulling that up, the reference image up, RC Maniac in the chat said they need more people on Patreon. They're sub 30 people, and he's absolutely right. For those of you who joined after Garrett gave their intro, patreon.com/ChaosCoreTech, ChaosCoretech. And 3D Printing and Painting asked, any particular mouse you use other than the pen? Or just any standard?
No, because ZBrush just allows a regular mouse.
Yeah, ZBrush doesn't let you get fancy. So like if I'm using CAD, I do use a 3D mouse sometimes, but otherwise, no, it's just a 2D mouse, or a regular mouse, I should say. I do have, this one is actually from the same company that does the 3D mouse. It's just a 3-button mouse. And so this middle button here is basically just the middle wheel click. So it's the middle click is all that is. And it's just nice because a lot of these 3D programs, you have to click that middle button a lot. And so this one just has an actual button for that rather than clicking the scroll wheel all the time.
Are you ready?
I'm not. Hold on.
You're fine.
Where did it? Oh, it saved it to a different folder. Okay, so I have it loaded into the texture thing.
Okay. So then I think once you...
Thanks, Mike, for posting that in the chat.
Multitasking.
You can click on the picture and it'll pop it up in the texture box. And then you have to click the on-off thing, I think. No, plus minus. Sorry. Plus minus picture, or like right below.
Oh,
there's like the plus minus.
Add to spotlight thing?
I don't know what it says. Sure.
It looks like a little speedometer underneath of it?
Yes.
Okay.
You do that, and then it comes up on your screen.
Oh.
Okay, but then you have to make sure that you have the 3D CW on the top left here.
Yes.
Okay, so then you have to go click on that and go down and click off on spotlight projection.
Okay.
So that your brushes will work.
How do you scale it?
The scale thing on the rotating bar. It's the top, and then like 1 over. Like that says.
Oh, right there.
Yeah, and then you can just, and you can change the opacity and stuff too.
Okay.
But
that is And then how do you get out of this mode? Like back to just modeling?
I forgot what button it is, dang it.
So this should tell you something as well.
We don't use this.
ZBrush has many features, and a lot of them are very weird, and like I said, very not intuitive. So you can really like learn 2 or 3 things and start making amazing things in here. Don't stress about not knowing all the buttons.
Yeah, the little bit that I do know about ZBrush, I learned a little bit from a YouTube video, went, applied it. Then the next time I needed to learn something different, I looked it up on YouTube and learned how to do the different thing.
I don't know. Control? Alt? No?
Those don't.
Escape? I don't remember.
All right, well, now I shouldn't have done this.
You can just hit texture and then I think you can hit like on off or something. No, that's blah. Isn't it just Z? Oh yeah, that's what Mella just said.
Just Z.
There you
Okay.
I was just
See, like I said, very not intuitive. But.
That's like the one thing I could never remember.
But now you can see what I'm going from for reference here. So his head is mostly just a sphere. Thank you, Mello, by the way. So I'm just going to increase the size a bit and pull out his nose area a little bit. And I'm not worried about being super precise with the shape here. It also looks like his head's a little squished, so I'm just going to squish it down. I also have X symmetry on, which is super handy. If you don't have that on, you can just hit X on your keyboard and it turns it on.
So which brushes, how did you pull it out like that so quick?
Oh, move brush. Apologies.
Oh, that was the move brush. Okay.
Yep. And that's pretty much the, I would say 95% of what I do is with the move brush. There are definitely other brushes that are important, but if you're just working on getting shapes, especially in the early stages, it's almost all move brush. And that's just, it's literally just called the move brush. So if you hit B and then M, it'll narrow it down to your M brushes, and then it's just move. And like I said, don't worry about being super accurate. Like that's not quite the right shape yet, but I just get it decently close. I tend to have an easier time recognizing the shapes once I have kind of the whole picture there.
Okay.
So I tend to get like all of the body parts in place, and then I work on shaping them better. So then from here, I need the body itself. And for that, I'm just going to put another sphere in here. So I'm going to go down to insert on the subtool palette and insert a sphere 3D. And then I'm going to drag it down, scale it a bit. And if you're not familiar with the 3D gizmo thing here, if normally your cursor up here is on draw, and that allows you to use your brushes on whatever 3D object you have. But if you click move, scale, or rotate, I think all 3 of them give you this thing now. And basically the arrows allow you to move it, which I don't want to move it on the X because I want it to be symmetrical, so I'm just undoing. And they just follow the axes. So the red is the X axis, and if you hover over it, it says move X. Green is the Y, and then blue is the Z. So if I grab any of those, it will only move along those axes. The little rectangle or box, I suppose, underneath of them, those scale on those specific axes. The yellow square in the center scales it uniformly on all 3 axes. And then these lines rotate it. And you just grab and drag along all of those. I'm going to hit X to turn on X symmetry again. And then I'm just going to position this kind of where his body is and get it about the length that his body is. And I'm going to model him in somewhat of a neutral pose. So, and his body has a little bit of a bend in it. And it looks like that's a pretty natural stance for him. So I'm actually, no, I won't go that advanced yet.
What?
I was going to do the bend thing, but moving is just
that's
as easy. So I'll stick to my move brush statement.
It is a cool trick.
It is, but it's pretty advanced and it's hard to get out of if you're not used to it.
That's very true. I still get messed up. I don't even know what half the things actually do. I just use that middle one.
Right. Okay, so it's a little bit wider, it looks like, and I'm just going to kind of square off the bottom here. Like I said, I'm not 100% worried about getting the perfect shape at this point. I'm just kind of getting things there. And then for most of these things, I like to use Dynamesh. And if you're not familiar with what Dynamesh is, it is basically every time you activate Dynamesh, it rewrites all of the triangles. So like if I turn on polyfill here, you can see that these are all, and they're not triangles, I guess. It counts them as triangles, but they're, they call them quads. Sorry, because they have 4 points. It's just a square made up by 4 points. But you can actually get ZBrush to do some kind of weird things with this. So I think under the surface, they treat them as triangles because all 3D geometry is made up of triangles. But let me see if I can get one of these to do something weird that it's not supposed to do. So
I know when you look at it, they always look like squares.
Yeah. So if I take this one and move it out, right? So it's still pretty much a square. It's not perfectly flat because that's the problem, is that it kind of needs those quads to be a flat plane, and it tries its best to do that, but sometimes that just doesn't happen. So if I move this one out, now you can see that that square is really, really messed up, and it's kind of having to add additional geometry there. And you can see these lines coming across right here, and those technically aren't there. And as you move them around, those lines shift, and that's just not good. Most 3D rendering software can't handle those. So just know that it's basically treating them as triangles underneath the hood. But I'm probably going to end up saying triangles or quads interchangeably, because for the purpose of Dynamesh, they pretty much are. So don't worry about that right now. But just take note that they're squares and they're kind of perfectly gridded right now. But if I was going to do something weird, like, let me stretch this out ridiculously. So you can see as I start to stretch it, it's moving those quads out. And as I push them to their limits, they start getting really, really wonky. Oops. So like say that I just wanted to drag some arms out of this. You can see that it becomes very unworkable pretty quickly.
Right.
So what you do to fix that, and I'm not going to be making the arms this way, I'm just using it as a demonstration. If you need more geometry there, you Dynamesh it, and it basically goes through and rewrites all of these quads. And I think it does it in like a grid projection type system. So it will come over all of these stretched quads and basically create new geometry there. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Dynamesh. It's the button underneath geometry. And you can see it goes through and tries to create, it doesn't create nice geometry at all, but it tries to take what you have there and create new geometry. So it's a little messy out here, but I can go ahead and smooth and just kind of clean it up a little bit. And if it's still too messy, you can Dynamesh again. So if Dynamesh is active, just hold Control, and when you're not on the object itself, like out in open space out here, draw a little rectangle, and that will re-Dynamesh. So you can see the topology is getting a little bit nicer. I can start smoothing, and now I have, whoa, created a fun hole there. Holy cow. You ever seen that?
Oh, wow.
It's kind of impressive, actually. I don't even know what I did. And the Dynamesh really wasn't happy with me. No, it's fine. That was weird.
It was probably just a weird ZBrush thing.
Yeah. So I suppose I can talk about that too, because ZBrush occasionally has weird hiccups like that. And, you know, undo, save frequently, because sometimes, I mean, there are times even now after doing this for several years that ZBrush just decides to twist itself into a knot and I can't get out of it, even though I thought I was doing something pretty normal. So I just have to close it and find an old save, basically.
So that is a common thing with ZBrush is save. It's one of those programs you make few changes and save a lot.
Yes, for sure. And then it does do auto saves every once in a while, and if you need to find those, you can go to File, Lightbox, and then there is a quick save option at the top here, and it will show you all of your old quick saves, I suppose. That can come in handy because it can kind of get away from you sometimes. And also, there are some weird things that ZBrush does that sometimes you just need to close it and reopen it. So if you ever kind of get stuck, try that first and then start Googling things. But anyway, so just know that Dynamesh is one of the things I use a lot, and that is activated by this button down here underneath the geometry palette, I believe those are called. And I'm going to turn polyfill off. You can see it looks pretty nice, and it'll smooth better now. So I can kind of smooth it out and get rid of some of those square looking things. Okay, so that's the body. I'm going to insert another sphere, and this will be the arm. So I'll move it over here, scale it up. And like I said, I'm going to put them in somewhat of a natural pose. So I'm going to go just a traditional A pose. And that just means his arms are sort of down at an angle, creating an A with the body. I think that'll be fine. And I'm actually going to just use this as his upper arm. I tackle this different with every model that I make. But for this one, I think it might be easier if I just keep the bicep and the forearm separate. So I'm actually just going to duplicate this one, which duplicate is a button underneath the subtool palette. And it just duplicates the current subtool that you're clicked on. So I'm going to hit duplicate, drag it down. And as you can see, I'm actually using a separate subtool now, so it's no longer the same thing. And then I'm going to rotate it and just sort of drag it into place. And his forearms are quite a bit bigger. So I'm just going to use the move tool and fatten these up a bit. You could also use the inflate tool here. I really like the move tool. And I've known some people in ZBrush that like never touch the move tool. So it's really personal preference, but that's typically where I go. In fact, I've been thinking about doing a video where I just exclusively use the move tool and smoothing, of course. But I thought that might be a fun video to do. Because I remember when I first started ZBrush, I was so bogged down in the different brushes and what I should be using to do different things when it really doesn't matter. It's just kind of whatever you can do to get the shape that you're looking for.
Just kind of a use what works for you type of deal.
What's that?
Just a use what works for you kind of deal.
Very much so. Okay, so that is, let's go back to the bicep here because it's looking too bulgy. So this is usually my entire process for starting a character. Most people call this like blocking out. You're just kind of getting all the shapes there, and I adjust as I go. But the most important thing is that you don't get into details at this point. Like say that he had a design on his chest or something like that, or like even his eyes and nose is a good example. Like I haven't gotten there yet, because you just kind of want to get the overall shape first. You work from low detail to high detail, so don't worry about all the little details yet. Get the main shape and then move to details. It'll
Hey,
save
Garrett.
you a lot of headaches, because if you get all of the details there, like say I had the eyes and the nose on there and then I realized I needed to change his entire head shape, it would be a lot more difficult at that point to change that stuff.
Hey, Garrett, with the symmetry tool. So like right now I have symmetry on. I have the forearm. When I hover over it with the brush, it's actually the symmetry is centered on the axis of the entire model, not
Correct.
just that one piece. How do you get it to go symmetry around a single?
So I don't believe ZBrush has local symmetry.
Okay.
You have to like keep it in the middle.
Yeah, so if you needed, like I'm not using symmetry on this one. The only things I'm using symmetry on are like the body or the things that are actually in the center. So like eventually we're gonna have two of these here. So like say that I had it on the other side and I needed to do something, then I would turn on X symmetry.
Right.
So I would be affecting both of them at the same time, something like that.
Okay.
But right here, I'm not using symmetry just because I guess I don't need to. But if you did need to, usually what you would do is you leave it in the center of the, like where the body is. You would just leave it there, do everything you need to with symmetry, and then move it. And from that point, you wouldn't have symmetry on anymore.
Gotcha.
I don't know. ZBrush might have local symmetry. I've never tried it.
You would think that they should, but
yeah, most 3D software will have local symmetry, and when I say local, it's local versus world. So like the about
so
here, you can see on the plane, there's like those three lines, the different colors. Those are the world axes. So like this green line is the Y axis, whatever in the world. So no matter what I do, no matter where I move these objects on here, that won't change. But if I say like the local Y, it would be the Y of the specific object that I'm on, and that changes when we move it. So like if I hit this move tool, you can see that the local Y, this green arrow right here, moves it this way now. And that is not along the actual Y axis. So I don't know. It makes sense to have local symmetry, and most things will, like Blender has that. But I don't think ZBrush does.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so now for his little hand thing here, I'm just gonna start moving this in to kind of create the hand shape. He's got a little like mitt looking thing. And like I said, and this is something that I need to take my own advice on more than I do, is to not get stressed at this point, because it's really easy to get bogged down in how difficult it is to get the shape that you want. And like, I don't know, it's usually about this point when I'm starting to get all the shapes there that I start freaking out. It's usually with the face that I panic a little bit, because I'm like, this isn't looking how how it should look. I can't get it to look right. Every model that I do has that weird period in there. So it's just important to not stress about it, and just kind of push through, because you'll hit a point eventually where you're like, oh, okay, that looks very, very close. I can just tweak this little thing and I pretty much have the shape. And then, you move on to working on something else, and you come back and you're like, oh, maybe I need to tweak the nose a little bit. And you do that, and it gradually takes shape, and you really won't see it until you're completely done with the character. So just try not to stress about how you're doing with your shapes. It'll come together in the end.
Mello said center pivot is kind of like local symmetry.
Center pivot. Is that under transform?
I don't know.
I see. I got
when you move it or whatever.
I've got symmetry right there.
How you making out so far, Mike?
Slower than Garrett, but okay.
Good, I'm not alert.
Garrett's gotten really fast because I'll be working on something and he'll be working on something. When he shows me his progress, I'm like, all right, that was a lot more than I thought you'd have done.
Well, and I actually, I was sort of exercises in that for a while with the streams that I did because modeling was taking me forever, and I still think I'm super slow at it, but I got a lot faster because I did streams and I made it a point of those streams that one, I wasn't modeling anything super important. They were usually like goofy characters. Like we did one where we made an Eminem, like those Eminem characters from the commercials, but they were like characters from The Walking Dead, like they were zombie hunters. So I made an Eminem character that had like gear, like they were fighting zombies, you know, something stupid like that, that you don't have to stress about. If it doesn't come out looking good, then who cares? You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I only gave myself, I think it was an hour or two.
Yeah, I think we always did like 2-hour streams.
Oh, I think, yeah, because I did like a half an hour to decide what we were modeling, because I usually let the chat kind of decide. So that way I didn't have any time to prep for it. I just had to like do something, you know? So I had a half an hour to figure out what we were doing, a half an hour of like sort of prep and things like that, prepping the model and getting all references and stuff like that. And then I spent the last hour just modeling, and I knew at the end of that hour I had to be done. So that way I got things as quick as I could, and there were a few that I didn't finish because I was too ambitious, and it kind of teaches you how to manage scope as well.
I noticed.
So, but that can be kind of a fun exercise.
I noticed right off the bat, like just looking at yours versus what I'm doing right now, yours is like way smoother. I have Dynamesh turned on and everything, like not in the, it's not pixelated. It's just like yours is more of a hand shape. Mine's more of a claw shape at the moment.
So that was something that I tried to teach myself as well, because it basically what it comes down to is you've touched your model more than I've touched mine.
Yeah, I think you've been doing things with bigger brushes and stuff than I was. I was using smaller, more localized brushes, which made a huge difference.
Correct. Yeah, and I try to keep my brushes pretty big. I only go small if I need to, because I mean, you can see pretty easily, like say that I need to adjust the curve of this. If I bring my brush up and adjust, it's a nice gradual little pull there.
Right.
But if I bring the brush down, it creates kind of a nasty little bulge. So you just got to figure out what's appropriate for your thing, and just be conscious of how many times you're touching it, because I could get that same type of thing if I just like, you know, went through and did this and like pulled a whole bunch. I could still get that same curvature.
Yeah,
but now you'll
that's
notice
what I
that
did. It's all
messy looking.
Yep, that's exactly what mine looks like right now.
Yeah, and that's fine to begin with. You can smooth that out later. It's just sometimes it's quicker and it's a little bit easier to keep things clean looking if you don't touch it as much. Gotcha. So I think, I don't remember who I learned that from, but I did learn that from someone on YouTube. Just like try to touch it as least the least amount that you can.
Yeah, because like right now I'm kind of playing hell trying to get it back to normal.
Yeah, and a lot of my early models in ZBrush were that way. Like if you go back and look at my Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty model, there's a lot of that, and I spent a lot of time just trying to smooth out all the nasty spots that I'd created by moving stuff around.
Gotcha.
So now I'm going to move on to the legs, and I'm going to copy this bicep part because it's just kind of a nice shape to move around. And another quick tip, rather than coming up here in the subtool palette and clicking on these different subtools to move around, what you can do, say I was on the hand down here, if you hover over the spot that you need, hold Alt and click on it, Sometimes
cool.
it will let you, sometimes it won't. And your brush size matters too. So like if you have a really big brush, it will tend to affect the model. But if you have a small brush, hold Alt, click on it, and it will activate that subtool. So you can edit it. So you don't have to constantly come back over here to the subtool palette. It's just, it speeds up your workflow quite a bit. So now I'm just going to duplicate that and then move it down. Sort of get it into place. And he's got these like dog-like back legs, or legs, I suppose, since he's bipedal. So I'm just going to, actually, while it's like this, I'm going to duplicate it again and bring it down here, just so that part is there. And then I'm going to come back up here and start adjusting the shape a little bit.
Someone asked if ZBrush is still $800. I think it's 800. That's almost 900. But don't they have different options now?
I believe they have a subscription
They do.
I'm gonna look.
thing now too. And there's also ZBrush Core, which is like
yeah.
$150-ish.
So $39.95 a month. 1 month. Rebills every month on the same calendar day. Or they do like $180 6 months. Or the $900, that's the one-time cost. It looks like.
So there's plenty of options out there.
It's nice that they do those.
What do they have for ZBrush Core?
Mm,
Because ZBrush Core is like, it's basically ZBrush, but they don't have a lot of
like
the
basic options.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of the extra features, which you don't really need. Like you can do a ton in ZBrush Core, and it used to be like $150, so it's a much easier entry point.
180.
180 now. Does that still come with the tablet?
I don't think so.
No.
I think that was like a deal they were doing.
Sure.
So you kind of pick one side or the other of the body and sort of flesh that out. And then I'm assuming at some point here we're going to end up mirroring or something along those lines, right?
Yes.
Jump
Yeah,
ahead.
and moving and stuff is just easier when you don't have something on the other side of the mirror. So I tend to wait a decent amount of time before I do that.
Yep.
But sometimes it can help kind of visualize the whole thing as well. So if I ever get stuck, like if I'm doing half the model here, and I get stuck and I can't really, I'm having issues getting like the face shape or something like that, I'll go through and flip everything, because just your eye will kind of piece it together better with everything there. And usually when I do that, it becomes a lot easier to tell what's wrong with the face, what I need to adjust to make it look a little bit better. So just whenever you think you're ready, and you can still, as long as there's a clear division down the middle, like they don't meet in the middle, or I guess in the case of the body where it's perfectly symmetrical, it's fine. You can keep working with symmetry on. I just tend not to, because scaling becomes an issue when there's things on either side of the symmetry there, of the x-axis.
That makes sense.
I think I can actually demonstrate that. So like right here, if I were to scale this body here, say I needed it to be a lot bigger, I could just grab this and scale, and see it scales from that center point there.
Right.
Basically where the cursor is, that's where it scales from. And I can move that around and everything. So say I wanted it to be down here, I could scale from that point, and it just becomes it's just very easy. But say that I had it, I'm just going to click mirror and weld here. So I have it on either side. Now if I scale, oh, I don't have symmetry on. So now I have symmetry on. If I scale, you can see that it's no longer scaling from that pivot point. It scales from the center point. So now it's no longer on this little gizmo here, and that just becomes very annoying. So like, you can see that before I did that, like it pretty much stays in the position of the leg. So, oops, I can do that, and it's still pretty much where the leg is. Like it no longer fits. I might need to move it a little bit. But if I mirror and weld and then turn on X, now if I scale it up even a little bit, oops, now it's in a different position to where the rest of his leg is. So I would need to move that as well. And it can just kind of be annoying. So that's why I wait.
Gotcha.
ZBrush Core,
yep.
We do the monthly subscription now for basically $10 a month. And then for single user, just like outright, is $180 now. But then you can still get one of those like Wacom, not monitors, but just the little
drawing tablet.
Drawing tablets. I mean, are those usually like $40 or $50 on Amazon? So.
Yeah, which for those of you who aren't sure what that is, that's the tablet that I held up while Garrett was getting his audio fixed at the beginning.
Too quiet.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. I hate the quiet.
I figured like this stream's gonna be more one where we're all kind of doing something and everybody's watching.
Right.
Another tip, if you ever need a model to be sort of tapered at one end, so like this, like say I wanted this end down here to be smaller than this one up here, you can also use smooth, and it will sort of recess the geometry enough and just keep smoothing, keep going over it, and it will come into more of a point, and then you can pull it back out to the length that you want, and that way it also keeps it pretty clean because you're smoothing, but you can start to get it to more of a point than you can with the move brush to begin with. Also, when you're just starting, don't worry about dynameshing too much. I remember when I first started, I dynameshed all the time, and I kept, you'd hear people say, don't dynamesh too much. And you can definitely do it too much. It'll, especially once you've got a lot of details, if you dynamesh, it will blur a lot of your details and your models can come out looking pretty muddy. But early in this process, dynamesh as much as you want. You're really just trying to get a shape. So this is definitely one of those programs that the ends justify the means. So do whatever you got to do to get the shape that you're looking for.
Actually trying to replicate like kind of how yours looks. I've been switching to the inflate tool to kind of swap.
Yep, inflate's another good one.
I've actually been using that one quite a bit.
I was gonna say, I think most people use inflate a lot more than I do. I don't know why. I just always go to the move brush. The only time I ever use inflate is if I have like a small spike or anything that like I just need to add thickness to, and move can't quite get it. Because I've watched a few other people model and they use inflate all the time. So I feel
like in ZBrush, like just different people have their like main favorite thing that they use the most.
For sure. And that's another thing. Don't, if you're listening to someone else, even if that person, I think the picture over here is what's causing that weird dynamesh issue.
Probably if you have it overlapping. If you have it overlapping when you do it, that's exactly what happens.
See, I never use these pictures, so that's why it's screwing me up.
Yeah, no, you can't like have it like overlapping while you try to mesh, I think. As long as it's not like behind the picture, you should be fine.
That's super weird.
Yeah, because I remember that happened to me when I was working on something a long time ago.
See what I mean? ZBrush is just a weird program. You gotta work with it. It's gonna fight you every step of the way, but you'll get used to its quirks. And
it's just like it's not that there's like not like it's gonna fight you. It's just
it fights you.
I mean, yes and no. I just feel like there's so much to know about it.
Yeah.
Like
well, and
so
they just
much.
have like it's a very complicated program that does complicated things.
Right.
And there are just some processes in here, like ZRemesher is a good example. It's probably a little advanced for this topic, but it will go through and give you nicer topology, which is just all the triangles and stuff. And you have to have your model set up in a very specific way to make it run well. And if you've done everything to make your model set up the way that it wants it to be, then you'll probably have an okay time with it. But if you do anything wrong and it's not set up that way, it's just not going to produce results that are even halfway usable. And there's a lot of things in ZBrush like that. So it's just you kind of have to know all the weird little things that it does, and then you'll be all right. But the process of learning those types of things is not always easy.
Yeah, it's funny. You're making me feel a lot more confident with ZBrush than what I was before we even started tonight. And I've played with ZBrush quite a bit and actually done a couple final models in ZBrush. I've never actually been this comfortable playing with it.
Good. And that was kind of my goal, because that was the feeling that I got the most when I was learning. It was just that, like, why is this so hard for me? Why is this taking so long to click? Everyone that I see seems to have such an easy time with this, and that's just because they've spent years doing it. They've learned the quirks, and so something that's very easy for them that they do all the time, they might not think about, that someone new wouldn't think to do it that way.
Right.
So I really try to just hammer home the point that it's gonna be tough. So just try it, and yeah, just however you can get there
don't
is
make
good.
it difficult. Like, try to stick with like the easy brushes and see what you can do with that. I feel like.
Yeah, and that was the other thing. I always felt like anytime I would see like hair or something like that was something that I didn't know how to tackle, because hair is a very complicated thing. I used to think, oh, I need a new brush. Like there's brushes where I need to figure out how to use some of these other brushes, when no, you really don't. It's just you need to learn sculpting techniques to match hair, and it's a skill thing. You have to study it, and you can absolutely make beautiful hair just using the move brush or just using the clay buildup brush.
Hair with the move brush, I mean.
Oh, I bet I could do it. I mean, it's not going to be like completely detailed, but I could make good looking hair. No, I bet I could make decently good looking hair with. We'll do a video. I'm going to test this.
Yeah, I think that we should do a
This is the best part of Garrett and Chelsea live. I missed that part.
I think that we'll do a challenge.
Yeah, challenge. I've been thinking about that for a while, the one brush challenge. I swear you can do so much with just a single brush, and it's just how you use it.
One of the other neat things with ZBrush too is, like, as you start to learn the brush shortcuts and like the abbreviations, it's basically you hit B for brush, and then like the move tool is B, and then M for move, and then V. But it's, as you learn it, it gets a lot easier to jump between stuff.
For sure.
And I guess that's the same with keyboard shortcuts in any program, if you've done photo editing or anything.
Definitely. Yeah, it comes with time.
I like these shortcuts, like the Shift for the menu and now Alt for switching in between pieces. And I was constantly over in the menu, and I've touched it twice since we got started tonight.
And I always hate the opposite end of that, because pretty much everyone will tell you, learn the shortcuts. And stuff like that. But then they go on, they're on with their tutorial and they just constantly say, do this with the shortcut.
Right.
And my mind doesn't store shortcuts like that. Like I can't just, you could tell me, this one action is this keyboard combination, like control D, and I'm like, okay. And then you give me like 3 other ones and I'm like, I will not retain that at all. I'll remember what the thing is called. Like I know I need to duplicate, but I can't remember the keyboard shortcut to do it. So I always appreciate when tutorials like show you the menus to do it, because I can usually remember where they are in the menus more easily than I can remember the shortcuts in the beginning. And then as I do them a whole bunch, like if I find myself doing one particular action more than others, I'll try to learn the keyboard shortcut and just incorporate it as I do things.
Right.
Just because it's so easy to get overloaded.
It's so windy out there.
Yeah.
"3D printing llama saying use Sculptress instead of Dynamesh. It will auto remesh."
I have seen that. I haven't messed with it too much.
Let's say
And so
ZBrush
I
has
guess
Sculptress control built into it, right? Or is he saying use the Sculptress program?
No, I think he's saying use the Sculptress feature in ZBrush.
Okay.
There's a Sculptress feature.
Yeah, I think they added it in 2018 or 2019.
2018 has it, because that's what I'm running on.
Okay. Yeah, it basically it sort of dynamically I think, and I could be wrong here, I haven't used it much, but I think like if you're pulling out a certain part, it'll add topology where needed there. It'll add triangles and stuff rather than having to pull it out, Dynamesh, pull it out again. It'll just add stuff there as you're moving it out. I'm not very used to that, so that's why I'm not using it. But you should absolutely check it out because it might make your workflow a lot easier. I remember watching the ZBrush, or what do they call it, Z Summit or whatever, where they talk about new features and stuff coming up.
Oh yeah.
Where they were talking about that. It looked really cool. It's just it's one of those things where I've gotten so used to my workflow, I just kind of do it. And so you should absolutely look at new techniques and ways of doing things because yeah, I definitely don't have all the answers.
I can tell you my character is not going to look like the original image. I mean, it's something.
Well, and see, a lot of times just modeling something is better than trying to model a specific character anyway, because you can make some cool looking things. It might not look like what you started out to or set out to model, but it can still end up looking cool.
So I'm curious, the first time you modeled something in ZBrush, did it come out with antlers or horns?
So I guess the first thing I modeled in this was like it was in Sculptress just because I wanted to try it, and it was a dragon head.
Okay.
I think that? Yeah, I did it for a video. You can actually watch it. It's on the YouTube channel. It's a long time ago. But then I also the first thing I actually did in ZBrush, I think I made a dog. Like I just started pulling in places, and it started to kind of look like a dog. So I ran with it and made a dog.
Yep.
Apologies, I'm taking a drink real quick.
Look at this great dog that I made. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. And I think that's what you should do for your first few ones. Just start with a sphere and start pulling things out, and
Yep.
I don't know.
See where it goes.
Yeah, just make a head of some sort, a creature. You know, add crazy things. Just have fun with it.
That's pretty much word for word where my first one went.
Yeah, I think it should be that way. So I'm getting into sort of the face details here, and this is usually like well, I mean, on almost all characters, this is the hardest part. And you just kind of have to do it, and I think a lot of times it's twofold, because it's what we pay attention to the most on anything is the face, because that's usually where emotion is, and that's just humans are trained to look at other humans' faces and animals' faces.
Yeah, what the heck is it? Anthropomorphic. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So not only do we recognize that, like, if the face doesn't look right, we can spot that really easily, which makes it difficult because you need to make it spot on. But like a character like this, it's designed around the face. Like the face has the most detail because that's where you're going to be looking. So that's naturally the hardest part of the model too. So it's just one of those things you have to get used to. And human heads are a little bit harder than a lot of creature heads, especially because we recognize them more. But again, it's just one of those things that if you're modeling it, get the nose there, get the eyes there, get the mouth there, get something in place of the hair, because even just a bald character versus character with hair, if you're going for something specific, makes a huge difference. So just try and get some basic shapes there, and you'll have an easier time getting a good looking result. Also, on 99% of characters, there are some like cartoon characters that the eyeballs are not spherical, but in most things, eyeballs are spherical. And so like even this, if you look at them, they're almost a little, what would you call it? Yeah, teardrop shaped, but that's his eyelids. So the eyeball itself will be a ball. So what I always do is I just get a sphere and I stick it there, and I don't mess with it. The only thing I'll mess with the sphere is positioning and like overall scale. Like I never squish it or anything like that. Well, I will sometimes in later things if it needs it, but I always start with just a sphere, and then I start molding the head around it.
So in other words, quit squishing my eyeball.
I mean, if it's getting you a good result, then by all means do it. But
I don't know. You get to critique ours, mine and Mike's when we're done. I didn't tell
get to critique mine too.
Remember, I gave you like $20 earlier, right?
You modeling something over there?
I should be.
Should be.
I need to finish the hands on this.
And symmetry can be kind of a fun thing with eyeballs as well. Like if you only stick one eye there, but you have symmetry on the face, it can actually help, because I can look at one with the eye and sort of sculpt like the eyebrows and stuff around it. But then if I need to move things in the eye as well, I can just come over to the other side and start moving things around.
Someone said, is that concave tucking inside the ear still just the move brush?
This over here? Yes. I haven't used anything but the move brush. And smooth, I've used smooth. But yeah, it's all been move. But like I said, that's just something that I've personally always done. So if you are using a different brush, then by all means, and I think I'm in the minority there. Like most people that I see that do ZBrush professionally, they don't use the move brush that often. So I don't know. I've just learned to work with it, I suppose.
Snake hook.
So even doing the eye sockets, you just use the move brush and smooth on that.
Yeah, mostly what I do is I just make it decently big and then go to the spot you want it and just push in.
Yeah,
It'll give you a nice.
Yeah, I had to rotate the camera in order to get that.
Yeah, you will. And then you just kind of push and pull, and you can kind of give yourself like push it out a little bit to match the eye on the other side, and you can give yourself a little bit more natural of a eye socket type look. And it's a lot of little adjustments is really all it is.
How's it? Is anybody in the chat modeling along as well? And my brother, John Flinchball, asked, is that concave tucking inside the ear still just the move brush?
Yes.
Yeah, see, I was using the build-up brush in reverse.
Yep, and that's perfectly valid as well. I use that. I would say my second most used brush is the clay buildup brush. And another technique that I kind of use sometimes, because especially when doing the face, there's a lot of little adjustments, like I was saying. And so like you were talking about earlier, Matt, that it gets kind of messy looking and there's just lots of little divots and it just looks like you fingered clay a whole bunch, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, poor choice of words. But what I tend to do is I'll do that until I get kind of the shape that I want, and then I over smooth it. So like I'll smooth it out and remove some of the detail that I just put there, and then I'll just add the detail back in because now I know kind of where I want the shape. So don't be afraid to like overwrite what you've done.
Gotcha.
To get a better shape, I suppose.
Printing Wall said I probably use the concave / crease brushes for the ear. Yeah, I mean you could use anything. Pinch, like reverse surface, like I mean reverse surface, is it surface? Standard, sorry. Reverse standard. I mean really there's a ton of ways.
Yeah, definitely mess with the brushes and just kind of figure out what works for you. And I don't know. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Sorry, lost my train of thought there.
Sorry, Mom.
No, you're totally good. What I was saying was not important.
What I was going to ask is, at some point I was messing with the face and apparently didn't have symmetry turned on.
Yeah. Is
there some way to kind of undo what I did? Like my nose is lopsided.
Yeah, at that point, there's not a lot you can do other than just undoing and going back and doing it again.
Okay.
Because I was gonna say, Chelsea, I think you did that like last week, didn't you? Had something that got off symmetry.
No, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how I do it, but sometimes I just do it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'll try to just like get it as equal as I can when it's not in symmetry, and then click symmetry again. So at least be close.
And that will work most of the time.
I'll undo if I haven't already done a bunch, but sometimes I don't notice it.
And see, I did that. Like there was one project that I did that on a while ago, and like when I first started, and I ended up having to do most of the project like that. and oh, it killed me. And I don't know, I'm a programmer by day, and so I'm used to having to like save things often, like save my code, so I don't lose it if like the power goes out or something crashes, which ZBrush will crash a lot. And I'm saying that I save a lot and I haven't saved yet. So,
Gotcha.
you know, do better than I've been doing. But I get in the habit of checking if I've saved, checking if symmetry's on. And I don't know, I guess I've just trained myself to work. Like my brain kind of works in a symmetry type mode, that I kind of structure my model in my head to work with symmetry. And so I'm just constantly checking if it's on, if it needs to be on, you know.
Yep, I gotcha.
But that's just one of those things that it's a habit. And if you get bitten real hard by it one time, it becomes easier to not do it in the future.
So I'll share just real quick, kind of to update the chat. I'll share mine and Mike's screen views. So I'm going to show Mike's first, just because his looks better than mine too. So here's where Mike's at right now. Mike has collar, he has tail, he has 2 arms, 2 legs.
Yeah, it's getting there.
I can't. Oh, there it is. Oh, that's looking good.
I'm still blocking out.
Yeah, the head looks really good though.
And then how do I get back to... Okay, there's mine.
No, that's looking good though. Like it's still like you're starting to get all the things there, and it just becomes a process of, you know, kind of moving things from here, and every little move gets you closer to the end.
Did they not see ours?
I thought they did. Maybe I didn't do that right.
They're saying they're not screen sharing, but mine is just my main feed, so you should.
In video. Okay.
'Cause I still haven't seen it come up on the YouTube feed.
See if it switches over to Mike's now. I'm watching the YouTube feed. It's like 20-second delay or something like that.
Yeah, it's going to like the upper right window, but not.
Ah, that's why.
Screen.
Well, it's still doing that, ain't it? Huh. How do I... How about side by side? I don't know if it affects what you guys see on this feed or not.
Is it because you've got Garrett's screen share still up?
It might be. How do I... Come on, Zoom. Or if I do this. I don't know how to do it.
Does Garrett have to not like share screen maybe?
Yeah, I can stop screen sharing without help.
Yeah, if you want to do that for a second, Garrett. Okay. So here you go. There's mine and Mike's. That should come up full screen now. Waiting on the YouTube delay. Well, my brother was following along in Blender for a moment, but he can barely find anything.
There we are.
Yeah, Blender's a tricky beast.
There we go. Now they can see what we were showing. So there's Mike's.
Sorry.
No, you're all right, Mike. Go ahead. And then there's mine full screen. I'll rotate mine around here for a second. Mine's quite a bit more lumpy than Garrett's. All right. Garrett, if you want to bring back your screen share, you can.
Certainly.
Please.
Another trick that I use that's more of like a trick for your own mind is if you find yourself getting stuck on one part more than another, just leave it alone for a while. Like if you're having a real tough time with the face, just move away from it, start working on like the arms or the leg or something like that for a while and come back later, or even just step away from your computer and, you know, go watch a TV show or something, come back like an hour or two later with a fresh mind. And or even because sometimes I do that, like I'll go to sleep for the night and I'll come back the next day and I'm just like, oh, well, duh, like the chin needs to be way bigger. And I do that and I'm just like, well, there it is. Like that was all that it took. But you were just like so close to it at the time that
Right.
you couldn't see that. So a fresh brain does wonders.
Phone's not off. Just kidding.
Well, no one ever texts me anyway.
That was a call though.
That was a call.
Important.
No, it was Dylan.
At 10:45 at night.
Oh, do you want to talk to him? Well, you can call him on yours.
Yeah, I'll just message him. No, stop. No. No. Just because a phone rings doesn't mean someone's here.
So yeah, the chat should be back to, or stream should be back to Garrett's camera or desktop. For those of you who are modeling along or viewing this later, when you're rotating around, if you hold shift, it'll snap to the like straight on view, side view, back view, top view, bottom view, all that. Every now and then I get myself lost in rotation. I have to do that just to regain some focus.
Yeah, that's a very good call out because I remember early in it, I would constantly get lost and not be able to find myself again. There's also a frame button. If you hit F, it'll frame up what you've got. So say you get wildly off and can't even find it, you can hit F and it'll snap back to.
Yeah, I've done that already. Or the dog's like tail swiped across my keyboard or something and hit the mouse. See, I think this is the other place where I went wrong. Is I always like trying to draw out a body or flesh out a body. I started with a sphere, pulled a body down out of it, and like I didn't do all the individual subtools.
Yeah, and I think that's just a process of, or one of the processes that I like. I've seen people that do it like you do. I've seen people that drag it out in the same subtool, so it's kind of chunked apart like this, but it's all within one subtool, and they're just different poly groups. I've seen people do that too.
I personally would not recommend doing it my way.
It can be a little bit harder, and for me, it depends on the model. Some models I want to be one piece like that, but something like this is just easier to segment it up. Everything good?
Oh, I'm getting that text back. I'm sure he just wants to talk to you about anime.
Probably.
Animu. Looking good.
Whoa.
So now I'm having a little bit of issue with the face, so I'm trying my technique of mirroring things just to kind of see. And I think the back of the head needs to be a bit wider. And so especially when I'm adjusting things like that need to stay spherical, keeping your brush big will really help it look nice.
Yeah, I'm definitely noticing the advantage to the whole keeping the brush big.
Yeah.
Oh, now what did I do? Okay, it wasn't that. What the heck did I do? I lost my entire model. Oh. So what's the V key? Because apparently it'll make it disappear.
V?
Yeah. When I'm under move. Well, okay, anytime. If you hit V, it disappears altogether.
Weird.
So don't press that button.
B or V?
V, I think.
V is in Victor.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, don't press that.
Don't press.
On mine, it switches colors. Oh, it just makes it completely black so you can see a silhouette of it.
Oh, yeah, okay. Now that you say that, my screen darkness is kind of really dark. I gotta calibrate this monitor.
That's interesting to be able to just see the silhouette.
I knew you could do that because when designing things, you always want to keep, like designing an original character, you always want to keep the silhouette in mind.
Yeah, because I mean, it shows a lot
Mm-hmm.
of like, you know, character. You know.
Yep.
Interesting. Look, see, happy accident.
Let's go with that.
I don't know what I do. I always do something where I'll get like, I'll start getting duplicates of my entire model.
Yeah.
Like anytime I like click on something, it'll
Oh,
just drag
yeah,
out.
I've had that.
Oh, it happens to me all the time. Like I must accidentally push two buttons at the same time. And I don't know what I'm doing, but
I've done that before too, and I haven't been able to duplicate it. Like when I'm trying to, I can't get it to happen.
I don't know how I do it.
Yeah, it's
but
weird.
I literally will do it multiple times a week.
See, I don't have it happen anymore, but I used to have it happen all the time.
So here's a good
question. If that does happen to you, hit Control N while hovering over this main like workspace, and it basically just refreshes the screen.
Ah, I was going to ask, what's the kind of recommended solution to that?
Yep, Control N.
Because I was like freaking out one time because it was like a really, I think it was Rancor.
Was it?
Yeah, it was Rancor.
Should probably save.
Yeah, you should probably save. It was Rancor when I was like basically done with it and I couldn't get it stopped doing that and I was freaking out because it was just all messed up and Garrett had to look up how to fix it.
Also, if you're working on something that's like mildly large, and this depends on your PC performance as well, but like mine right now, it's taking 10 seconds to save, which can be kind of a lot because it auto saves every once in a while. So you'll be like in the middle of working and it'll start to auto save and then you can't do anything for 10 seconds. And 10 seconds is mild because this isn't that complicated of a character. When you get to the more complicated characters that you're touching like thousands of times, it can be a lot. So if you want to speed up your save time, you can come up here to File and then click this Undo History button here. And what that does is it basically tells it not to save your undo history. And I mean, you have to kind of be careful because like right now, if I were to save this and close it and reopen it, I could undo everything that I had done. I think ZBrush has some limit, but it's bigger than this. So I could step back through my process, and if you turn off undo history, it won't save any of that history. So if I'd close it and reopen it, I wouldn't be able to undo anything that I had done before that. So, but it can be advantageous because there are times where a quick save will take a minute, and it really sucks to have to stop modeling like every 15 minutes while it's saving for a minute.
Right.
And I'm sure having a better computer would probably help with that.
Definitely.
So some people may not have that issue, but we do.
So now, okay, so I'm at a point I want to mirror. So how'd you do that? I missed that.
Okay, so there's multiple ways. Actually, I don't know. I use someone else's method.
But mirror and weld is still.
I don't know where that button is.
Oh, let me look.
So one way to do it is to like, if you want it to be separate, you can duplicate it, which is under the subtool menu. Click duplicate. It'll create another subtool with that. And then if you scroll down, there's a deformation subtool or deformation palette, and there's a mirror button there. And there's a little X, Y, and Z there, so you can mirror it across different axes. But the X is there by default. Deformation. Yep. So mirror right there. It'll just flip it to the other side.
Yep. Got it.
And then you can like merge the two. But there is another way, like the one that I've been using. I took Shane Olson's class. If you don't know who Shane Olson is, you should look him up because he does amazing things in ZBrush. He worked for Disney for a long time. And he has a course. It's on the pricey side, but totally worth it if you can afford it. And he gives you like some really cool brushes and a different layout and stuff like that. Like you can see on my screen, I've got all the brushes at the bottom here that I use frequently. That was a layout that he gave me. And then there's this menu that has a mirror and weld.
Says tools, geometry, symmetry, I think.
Tools, geometry. I don't see a symmetry there. Size position. Oh, it's under modify topology. So if you go to geometry, the subtool or the palette, sorry, and then down to the modify topology button there,
yep,
there is a mirror and weld.
You can choose X, Y, or Z.
Yep. And basically,
obviously X.
Yeah, basically what it'll do is that whole process that I just showed you, but it takes it in the same subtool and just mirrors it right there, which is nice. So like here, I'll show you on this arm here. I'll just make a copy of it so we can see it better. I'll move it out here. Oops. And so say that I've got this here and I wanted it to be on the other side. I could just hit mirror and weld, and it'll pop up on the other side. Now I can hit X for symmetry, and it's all good, right? And you can undo that, which is nice. But say that it's something like this, where it just kind of barely crosses the X-axis. Mirror and weld can kind of do a weird thing, where if I click it, you can see that it just erased the whole thing and just has this weird little blob here. Yeah. And so what happened is that the X-axis happens like right through the middle of this. So there's this little bump over here that it's taking that and then mirroring it to this side. So it basically erases the whole model. So instead, if that's happening, you can just hit mirror, like under the deformation deformation palette. So it'll flip to the other side, do it again, mirror and weld, and then you'll have both hands. But you do have to be careful because it does, I mean, the welding part, it actually sticks them together. So if I smooth this out, you can see that it actually stuck these two together. So if you do that, you won't be able to get them apart again without undoing. So just be conscious of that.
All right, now I made another one of those don't do what I do things. Okay, so it said, I did that. It said no polygons. The mesh doesn't have polygons. So I went up, I thought I had to make poly mesh, or do the make polymesh 3D thing.
Uh-huh.
And now I'm stuck with just the part that I had selected.
Oh, okay, so I'm not super good with this, but up in this menu up here that's like above the subtool palette,
Yep.
there should be like, click on one of those little tiles that has like pictures of the model in there.
Yep.
Like click on the one very top right. Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
So basically, those are actual tools, and so within that one tool, you have all of these subtools. That's why they're called subtools.
Yeah.
But you can actually like zoom in and make one of those subtools your only tool, and that's what you did there. So you just needed to click on the actual tool again.
Hey.
It's confusing.
I'm learning all these things that would have made me stop and restart.
Yeah, and that's because we've stopped and restarted before.
So, okay, so now mirror and weld on the X. I have the hand selected.
Yep.
And it says the resulting 3D mesh does not contain any polygons. Operation canceled.
Okay, so that might be one of those cases where you need to mirror first, because it might be trying to mirror the left to the right, and you don't have anything on the left.
Oh.
So go ahead and go under the deformation palette.
Yep.
And then click mirror. And it should flip it to the other side. Now try it again.
Mirror and weld. Yep.
There you go.
So,
and then remember to turn on X symmetry.
Yeah. Gotcha. That's kind of, so ZBrush is sort of dumb in that respect. It doesn't know left from right, or right from left.
Yeah. And see, and most of the time it will catch that, but sometimes it doesn't. And that's a really good example of ZBrush just being a weird program that you have to set everything up perfectly for it to knock the dominoes down. You know what I mean?
Yep. No, that's cool. I'm glad I'm kind of learning this stuff a little bit better. Hopefully it's helping everybody in the chat.
Yeah, hopefully. I know it's basic art school stuff, but you know, I didn't have an art background growing up, so it helps me from time to time. If you have a reference image that's like decently normal perspective on the character, kind of like this one that I have here, like he's hunched over a bit, so I think his head's a little bit closer to the camera than some of his body, like than his feet, but it's not too far skewed. Sometimes you get pictures that have much more weird perspective and it won't work, but you can kind of figure out proportions a little bit better. So like say it's not looking right and you're worried that like the legs aren't looking good, you can kind of see, like just take your finger next to the image. You can't see me because it's on the screen here, but I'm taking my finger and just kind of measuring how long the legs are, and then I compare that to how long the body is.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
And then and then you can also do that with the head, and then move over to your model and do the same thing. And sometimes it can really make a difference.
Your dog will not stop licking my hand, and it's disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah, she does that. Okay.
So now can you select, say you want to reposition. So like I just mirrored my legs over.
Yeah.
Say I want to reposition two separate subtools. Like I kind of want to keep the joints. Like I know this is where Z spheres come in play.
Mm-hmm.
Is being able to like grab a hold of a part and everything that's, so to speak, attached to it kind of moves with it.
Sure.
Is there a way to do that? Like, so I want to drop this knee down to kind of match. I'm using your reference image.
Sure.
Is there a way to do that?
Okay, so this one's kind of weird. It's another one of the, and one, there's like 3 different ways to do this. So like I'm sure someone will mention the transpose tool, but I think that's a little complicated for what we want to do here. So if you go to the move, whatever tool rather than draw, there's this little check mark dash clear at the right side of it.
Yep.
Click that.
Okay.
And I think, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think you might be able to, oh, no.
Transpose.
That's just moving. So we may need to use the transpose tool here.
Okay.
So, describe to me what you want to do. Are you just moving the leg pieces, or are you wanting to use a brush on them?
Well, so I want to grab a hold like right. How can I relocate that thing? Okay. That did not do what I thought it was going to. Okay, so like right up here where the red square is to like stretch.
Yeah.
I want to grab a hold, basically be able to grab a hold there and lower that hole. Because looking at your picture, like his one knee's lower than the other.
Sure.
So I'm like picturing stretching this leg, or I'm not even sure, just kind of repositioning the kneecap.
Okay. So I think what you'll want to do is go to Z plugin, and then there's a transpose master thing right at. Sorry, what's that?
Is this getting into more advanced stuff?
Decently. It's not that hard. And it's good to know that you can do this.
Okay.
So, and I don't believe ZBrush Core has this. So if you're using ZBrush Core, you won't be able to do this. But yeah, go Z plugin, and then there's a transpose master.
Yep.
And then if you click T-pose mesh, so it'll run through, and basically what it's doing is combining all of your things
Okay.
into one subtool. So now you can move everything together. So like if you grab your move brush or whatever brush you want to use and start moving.
Oh yeah, look at that. That's exactly.
You can move them together. And then when you're done, go back up to Z plugin, and I think you click that T-pose sub T, the next button next to it, and it will run back through and apply the things you did to each subtool and break it apart again.
Okay. Neat. So Z plugin. You said T-pose sub T?
Yeah, I believe that's the one.
Yep, there it's breaking everything apart.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Neat. I'm learning a lot. I hope everybody else is.
Yeah, Garrett's taught me a ton in ZBrush. Otherwise, like I used to be a mess in that program.
Well, and sort of the hard thing is like, because mostly how I learn new programs is like I get in there and I know I want to do something, so I Google how to do it, and then it comes up and someone's like, "Oh yeah, you just press these buttons." I'm like, "Cool," and then I'm like, "Oh wait, now I want to do something else, but I don't know how to do that," so I Google that, and I do that enough until I learn it.
Right.
But the problem is with ZBrush that it's like you kind of have to know what things are called. Because I mean, you might be able to get like Google ZBrush move everything at once, you know, and get transpose master, but some of the things you can't find by just Googling unless you know the name, so it can be kind of hard.
Yeah, if you don't know the terminology, you can kind of be left in the dark to some extent.
Yeah, and I definitely suggest if you have the time and are so inclined to improve your modeling skills. I actually got this from Mike on the stream here. Watch the Pixelogic live streams, because they get people who are super talented in ZBrush, like that Shane Olson and lots of other people, and they get on and stream for a couple hours making a model, kind of like we're doing here, and answer questions, and they are much more skilled than I am. And I think they're pretty good about, most of them that I've seen are pretty good about interacting with the chat. So that's another really good resource if you're wanting to get better at ZBrush.
Yeah, most of them seem to be pretty good. They'll stop what they're doing, go off to the side. Especially Shane does a lot. They'll just stop and go, oh, okay, hold on. And then everybody else is there going, come on, finish what you're doing. And he just goes off on a little tangent and helps you out. It's really good for everybody else.
Yeah, I have a couple of Pixelogics tutorials for ZBrush downloaded on my phone for times I don't have cell service. I'll sit there and watch those to try to pick up something.
Yeah. Yeah, I've only watched their streams like probably 3 times that were more than like 5 minutes long. That I stuck around for longer than 5 minutes, I should say. But those 3 times I learned so much just by little offhanded things they would say. And I would just be like, oh, okay, that completely changes my life in ZBrush, so thank you. Okay.
RC Maniac said, looking around, it seems that Ori has a hoof.
Ori has a hoof?
Is that what kind of feet he has his hooves?
Yeah, I guess I should find a new thing because this image has
like blurred.
Yeah. So this would be where you would go find different reference images. Has a hoof, really? I wonder if this is fan art because this is shows them having more like dog feet. Oh, yeah, maybe this one does. And it seems like a lot of fan artists miss that too. Or maybe it's just furries because they don't like hooves apparently. Well, a lot of this art is like, it's like dead on furry art, which is kind of scary. Oh yeah. Man, that's super weird. He does have like yeah, hooves. Okay. So let's morph that a little bit. And then in a second, I'm going to do the tail, and I think I'm going to use Z-spheres for that.
Oh, so okay. I'm interested in that, combining Z-spheres into a regular model.
Yeah, it works really well for snake-like things. Or tail-like things, I guess.
So Garrett, have you ever taken a model and added a skeleton to it? Like the, so to speak, like the way Z-spheres work?
Yeah, so I know what tree you're barking up there, and that's like posing things after you've modeled them, right?
Yeah, so like I've got the full body scans of me and Jen from Earth, and it would be neat to be able to actually like reposition our arms and stuff.
Right. So yeah, that you're not gonna like the answer, because I looked for that for a very long time, and that's actually what led me out of ZBrush, because ZBrush is just abysmal, frankly, at that type of thing, which I understand because ZBrush works mostly with high poly meshes,
right?
And it's very hard to pose a high poly mesh. So there are things in ZBrush like that you can take a Z-sphere skeleton sort of and pose on top, or like to use it to pose the object itself, but it doesn't like do any form of weight painting or anything like that. So like a good example is like if you have the arms or whatever and they're out in a T pose or an A pose, and you go to move the arm like that, it will a lot of times start pulling the chest out, and it just does not look natural at all. And there you can monkey with it to fix it, but it's like it's very, very difficult, and not to me it just wasn't possible. I tried for a very long time to pose things in ZBrush. You can also just try like the transpose master that I just showed you, and then masking things off and like, smoothing. Like here, I'll show you. Like say that I wanted to bend his arm or something like that. I could mask part of it here. So like right there is where I wanted to bend it. And then I would, you hold Control and tap on it, and it softens the mask. And so like right there, that's a pretty harsh mask. And if I were to try to move that right now, it would break right along that point, and it just looks horrible.
Yeah.
So what you can do is Control click, it'll soften the mask, and so it's a little bit better. But ZBrush also has, like, it's weird how they do this. It's a two-sided mask, so when I soften, it only softens on the mask side. So I'll do that, and then I hold Control, click outside the model. It'll flip it, and then I soften the mask on this side as well.
Okay.
And then you can kind of move it a little bit. Like I'll bring it out a little bit like this, and then rotate up like this. And you can sort of pose it right like that, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't look great, and you get these weird kind of like soft creases, but you can do that, and it's basically like it works way better with low poly meshes. Like if you have a really, really dense mesh that has a ton of polygons, you're going to have a ridiculously hard time doing that.
Gotcha.
Just because you can't soften it enough to make a difference, you'll always get just a really harsh line there. So basically the solution, and how I've been doing it, and how, like, you know, movie studios and video games do it, pose their characters, is you take the high poly mesh that you've gotten from ZBrush, you export it out into a program like Maya or Blender, and then you basically recreate the entire mesh to be lower poly. And you have to make sure that the loops are all like nice so they bend. Like the mouth is a really good one. You want to have like really, really nice loops around the mouth, because when the mouth is moving, you don't want weird triangles poking in there, because it'll make it look weird. So you have to kind of know how to get those loop patterns, and how to have just enough polygons to make it movable. Yeah, and preserve the detail that you had. Like, I mean, it's an art into itself. It's called retopology, and game studios and movie studios and stuff like that, they have entire departments that are devoted to retopology. In fact, I think a lot of them outsource retopology to India. Like there's entire buildings filled with, like, you know, thousands of people that they just day in and day out, they take a high poly mesh and they retopologize it. And that just makes it lower poly and able to be rigged. So then once you have that low poly mesh, you have to go through and put all the skeleton there, like get the bones and everything. And then you have to go through the process of skinning it, which is like weight painting and stuff like that. And that's basically telling it how much the bone, like how much the bone rotation impacts certain parts of the mesh, so it deforms properly. And that is also an art of itself. So it's basically a like 20-step process, and each step is very difficult. And then at the end, you have opposable mesh. So,
Gotcha. Sounds like something I'm not going to be doing.
it's a lot, and like that, I've been learning that for probably the past 6 months, and I'm still terrible at it. Getting there though. Okay, I was doing this. Thank you to whoever called out. Ori having a hoof.
RC Maniac.
Thank you, RC Maniac. I never would have guessed that.
Well, RC Maniac, if you want, give me a second. I'll make you a mob. I apologize to the chat. I know usually I'm paying way more attention to the chat than this, but I'm also not usually modeling during the show.
Yeah, it's hard to model and chat at the same time.
It is. I don't know how, when you guys did the model along streams years ago, I don't know how you managed to do that. This is
Chelsea is the answer. She would read the important things to me.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Yeah.
Good job.
So yeah, if you get ZBrush, get yourself a Chelsea as well. It makes a big difference.
Is that an option instead of the tablet?
It's pricey, but
How much does that cost?
you actually have to get a quote for that. They just won't tell you the price, which is not a good sign.
Never a good
How
sign
much-
when there's
I
no
know how much they
price.
cost afterwards.
Right?
This is fun. I like this.
Oh, I just did it.
What, the thing where it duplicates?
Yeah, I accidentally hit edit instead of move or draw up
that
at the
what it
top.
is?
Yep, because then you just draw out another character.
What's the shortcut for edit?
P.
I don't think I would be hitting T, so I must be hitting edit, like the actual.
Yeah, I just hit it when I was trying to click draw, and I've never done that before. It's weird. Okay. Tail, that's what I was going to do. So, to insert a Z-sphere, you do just that. You go down to Insert and click Z-sphere. And then mine's in the body, so you can't see it, but make sure you're on that subtool. And then you click Move, and I'm going to make sure X symmetry is on, just so I don't move it off of the X axis. I'm going to snap it to the side view, and then I'm going to just, moving is different in this view. So you don't get that gizmo like you do when you're sculpting. You just hover over the sphere, which if I hover over the head, it's in there. So you just grab it and pull it out. And you can see right there, we've got this weird red sort of Pokeball looking sphere. And so it's going to be the tail. So I'm just going to park it right there. And then I'm going to go to scale and scale it down a little bit. And then basically what you do to get new Z-spheres is draw. And so X symmetry is a little bit different on these. I mean, it works the same, but if I go to draw on the sides, see, it creates two Z-spheres like that, which I don't want since I want it to just be a tail on the X axis here. So if you have X symmetry on and you start to hover close to the center, your cursor will turn green and snap to the middle. And that basically tells you that you are right on the center, and it will only create one Z-sphere when you pull it out. So I'll go ahead and do that, and I'll get it roughly the same size. Doesn't need to be exact because you can adjust it later. And then I'll click move and oops.
Oh, it's like, whoa, not safe for work.
Yeah, here, Mela. And so then I'll just click move and drag it out like that. How's it looking now, Mela? You like that?
All right, so run through that one more time. You do insert Z-sphere.
Okay, so now you want to click on the move thing. Well, make sure you got the Z-sphere highlighted, yep. And then click on move at the top. And then it is inside the head there. So do you have X symmetry on?
Sure.
Just rotate to the front, and you should be able to see if you have it on.
Okay, now I do.
Okay. So snap to the side, and then just drag it down to his butt.
There we go.
So in brush size does matter on this. So I usually keep mine pretty small when working with Z-spheres, and you've got yours is small there, so that's good.
Okay.
So now go back to, go to the scale button at the top. Yep. And then click on it and drag, and you can make it smaller.
There we go.
There you go. And then go to the draw button at the top and rotate to the back so you get like a green little thing on the center there.
Yep. Yeah.
And that'll tell you that you're in the middle. So zoom your camera in if you need to. It might help.
Yeah.
And then just click and drag. And basically the more you drag, so that's going out each side there.
Yeah.
So undo, and then make sure your cursor's green on the center part. So like rotate it so you're looking straight on from the back. There you go. So see it's green there. That means you're in the center. So and then when you drag out, the more you drag, basically the bigger the sphere gets.
Yep.
So go ahead and just drag until it's about the same size as the other sphere. And then go ahead and let go.
Okay.
And now rotate to the side and go up to the move. Oh, undo what you did there. Okay. Yep. Oh, redo. That Control Shift Z is redo.
Is it Control Shift Z? Okay.
Yep. Okay. Now go up to draw, or yeah, draw. No, sorry, move. You're on move. You're good. Just go ahead and click that and drag it all the way out to about the length that you want the tail.
Gotcha.
And it actually looks like his tail. Let's see. It's a little bit bigger towards the end, so I'm going to make it just slightly bigger. Now, the cool thing is, since we have it the length that we want it, we can just add points along the center by clicking on, once again, for lack of a better word, shaft. I don't know, the tube. I don't know. So I'm basically, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add 2 points sort of equidistant along this thing. And then I'm going to move it sort of how the tail is. I'm going to make sure I'm snapped to the side so they stay pretty much on the x-axis. And I'm just going to kind of start shaping the tail. And then once I kind of have that to the place that I want it, I just start adding more Z-spheres along the path to smooth it out so it's not so sort of jagged along the way. And I just usually break it in half each time, move them, see how that looks, and then continue that process. So you can see that right there is starting to look pretty good, but I need some more here and here. And then just kind of move them to follow the curve. And another way to look at this, because right now you're looking at the Z-sphere thing. If you want to know what it'll look like when it's turned into a mesh, you can hit A, and it will basically go into a preview mode. And then you can hit A again, and it'll go back out. Now, ZBrush or Z-spheres are another one of those finicky things that if you add another one, another sphere that's like super tiny to the point that we can't even see it, and it somehow gets inside the mesh, it will freak out completely. And when you hit A, it will like turn into this crazy monstrosity. And so you just have to be very careful not to add Z-spheres where you don't want them. And that's just a thing that comes with practice.
As I say, that happened to me all the time.
When I started using it, it was like a plague. Like I almost stopped using them because it happened to me so often that I would get like 3/4 of the way done with my Z-sphere thing, hit A, and then it was just unusable at that point, and I had to like completely undo everything I did. But I got a little more careful and deliberate with where I pressed down when I was using the draw thing. And you gotta be careful for double click. So like sometimes I found that the mouse that I was using had a tendency to double click when I didn't want it to. And that was causing that to happen. So just be careful and deliberate with those. And I can see you're running into the issue. You added a bunch of spheres, and now you need to resize it.
Yeah.
If you want to remove some of those spheres to resize it a little bit smoother, you can go to the draw tool and alt click on a sphere, and it'll take it out of the chain.
Yep.
But that was why I made sure that I got the start size of his tail and the end size of his tail where I wanted it before I started adding those, because then they are just like a smooth gradient all the way through.
Neat, you can break it too.
Yep, you really can. Z-spheres are super finicky, so it's just kind of one of those things you have to work with, and it takes some getting used to. But they're pretty nice for things like this. And as you're doing it, constantly hit A just to make sure that you're fine, because A will tell you if you have any issues. Also of note, sometimes I would hit A before I had 3 spheres out there. And I think you need 3 spheres for it to register as an actual mesh. Like if you only have 2 spheres, I don't think it'll actually show up right. So make sure you have at least 3 before you hit A. Otherwise, it'll look weird. Let me know when you're done with that, and I'll show you how to get it out of the Z-sphere mode and to an actual mesh.
All right, give me 1 second. I'll be done screwing around.
You're good. You're good. No rush.
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 Okay, I'm happy with that.
Okay. So make sure you're on your Z-sphere subtool.
Yep.
Go ahead and hit A. And then on the right-hand side, go down to the, what is it? Adaptive Skin palette. Okay, so, and you can see that if you hit A now, that preview goes on and off.
Yep.
Okay, so then I make sure that the density is at 3 or 4. I think I'm gonna go 3 this time. And then the Dynamesh resolution, because basically what it's gonna do is it's gonna Dynamesh this. And so that's just the resolution that the mesh will come out of. So 128 to 256 is usually perfect. So somewhere in there. And then when you're ready, go ahead and click Make Adaptive Skin. It'll do some processing. You can watch the progress bar up at the top. It'll say creating adaptive skin. So give it a second.
Yep.
And then when it's done, you have to go back up and click Insert. And it will show up in this little quick pick thing up here, as it'll say skin _ Z-sphere, whatever, you know. So then just click on that and it will insert a new subtool. So now you want to make sure that you're not working with your Z-sphere anymore. You're working with that new subtool that you created. So I always just hide the Z-spheres and then I like move them to the top or the bottom, you know, just to kind of keep it organized so I'm not accidentally clicking on that. So, and then I just go through and smooth out what the mesh that I have now. And you'll notice that it will, because it looks pretty, turn on X symmetry if you had it,
Yeah.
if you're working with symmetry there. But it looks pretty like faceted when you first start, but it smooths really, really easily.
Graybeard said I came over in time. I think when you're talking about the shaft.
Yeah.
And let's see.
That usually happens when I'm streaming.
Yeah, that's pretty typical.
Yeah. That's a pretty mild one. You should count yourself lucky.
So then if you wanted to go back and tweak it, you wouldn't be able to. You'd have to do this, tweak the Z sphere and then make a skin again, right?
Correct.
Okay. Just making sure I kind of understand.
Yep. You got to get that Fusion 360 out of your mind.
I know.
You've been spoiled by that timeline down there.
Yeah. Being able to jump around in that is amazing.
Yeah.
And when you try to do something organic like this, it's like, I think it makes it harder trying to come from Fusion.
For sure. Yeah, I experienced that same thing. Okay, another thing that can kind of help if you find yourself getting stuck is adding color.
Ooh, yeah.
Sometimes you don't want to do that because it can cover up model issues. Like say you have something that's not quite right. It can help cover that up and make it look fine. But sometimes it'll help kind of understand where you went wrong or something that's not quite right. So you're just gonna have to make that decision. So what I'm gonna do is Ori's pretty much just white. So I've got white here, and I'm gonna switch my material. Right now it's matte cap gray. So I'm gonna click on that, and then I'm gonna go to skin shade, and it's actually a pretty nice white right there, actually. Hi, Evie.
She bothering you?
And now she is, yeah.
I might have to go over her.
Yeah. I know. I can't pick you up right now, B. I'm working.
Evie.
But now I'm going to go through each of my subtools, and I'm just going to click fill color.
Okay, now
And that
when
will...
I skin shade, it changed them all.
Yes,
Oh, wow.
and that's just basically changing the material. You haven't actually applied anything. Like nothing changed but the material. So it just looks different.
Okay.
And so you actually have to click fill color to get it to actually change the color.
So I'm going to what? Color and then fill object? Is that right?
Yes.
And then you got to do that on every tool.
Yes.
Okay.
And then Ori has black eyes, but there's a white dot on the eyes. So what I'm going to do there, in fact, I'm actually going to tweak this black a little bit because it's more of a blue black rather than a pure black. So I'm gonna pick a nice blue color, and I'm just gonna sort of drag it down into the black space. And I'm gonna add that to the eyes and the nose. Actually, is the nose lighter, or is it just this art that it's lighter? The nose does appear to be lighter. So I'm gonna just come back up into the color a little bit, fill object. I think that's, might even go a little lighter. There we go. So now I'm going to click on the eyes, and I want that white dot to be there, but I can't just fill the whole object. So I'm actually going to bring up my brushes, and there's a pen brush. I believe it's pen A. Hit P so it'll narrow it down. Yep, pen A is usually what I go with. And then I'll make it smaller. I will set the color just to white. Make sure symmetry is on. I'll just try to make a nice little, need to increase the polygon count here. So I'm just going to divide it, and that should give me a nicer circle. I need to divide it again. There we go. Go a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go through now and mirror and weld all of these. Okay, so now I have pretty much everything there. I'm just going to pose it a little bit, and keeping things separate like this will actually help me pose it. Might actually fix up these legs a little bit. I'm not super happy with how they connect to the body. And see, now that it's white, it's actually a little bit harder to see where I have some of those not so clean spots. So for the material, I'm going to come back and just switch it back to matte cap gray. And that'll just, everything still has the same colors that it did before. Now it's just, it makes everything a gray tone and gives it like a nice reflectance so you can see some of the imperfections. Okay. So if I wanted to pose it like this one here in the picture, I would just move these. So I'm going to turn X symmetry off because now I want to move the legs independently. Actually, I'll go like that so it's over there. And I think I will actually, I'm going to use that little checkmark dash thing that I talked about before. So this one's kind of weird. It basically allows you to move all the subtools at once. Like you can see if I check it and I drag something around, the whole model moves around. So what I want to do instead is if you hold, I believe it's Control-Shift-Click on each of these subtools, and it will make them have like a weird liney texture on them. Actually, the other way around. So, okay, yep. If you Control-Shift-Click, it makes everything else have a liney texture. So I'm just going to do that on what I want to move over here. And so basically what this is meaning, and if you want to flip it, you can Control-Shift-Click outside of the model, and it'll just reverse what you have done, kind of like masking and stuff like that. So basically what this means is that right now I have only the legs selected, so I can move the legs together and the rest will stay still. But I only want to move that one leg, so I'm just going to mask off this one side. And that did not do what I wanted to do. Oh, I probably have to switch to each of these subtools and mask it, I bet. Yep. So that was the deal. So now I'm going to move the little 3D cursor up to basically where the hip joint would be over here. And that way I can rotate this sort of like a leg would, you know what I mean? So I'm going to rotate that one down and maybe out just a little bit. And I'm going to move it back just a little bit. And now I don't want those, oops. Okay, there we go. So now I'm only moving the other part. So I'm going to reset that transform, come down here, set it up in the knee where I want it. and lock that. I'm pretty much just gonna rotate that a little more. Now, I think that's pretty much where I want it. And so I'm gonna get rid of those as well. I'm just kind of moving my way down the line here on the leg. And I may need to move that a little bit more. I'm just gonna move it down slightly.
You're very quietly mumbling. I'm not even sure if they can hear you.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I kind of get my Bob Ross mode kicked in.
Right?
I'm just gonna paint these happy little trees.
That's what we should have modeled. Happy little tree.
All right.
It is cold outside.
Yeah. It's pretty cold in here too, actually.
No, I'm not cold up here, but outside it was very chilly.
Okay, so now I'm gonna do the same thing for the shoulder area.
I'm reading back at the chat. Graybeard popped in. He said, I came at a weird time. I'm not sure which point he popped in, but I have a feeling it had to do with the tail. Holy crap. I didn't realize we've been going for almost 3 hours.
Have we?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Modeling takes a long time, and there's no real way around that.
Right.
So just don't feel bad about taking forever to model.
If anybody in the chat is modeling along, if you're on Twitter, tag at F3DPCH and grab a screenshot of your model and tag it. What did I say? F3DPCH model along, and we'll show them here shortly on the stream.
Whoa.
What you do?
I must have let go of the shift keys. I turned the model around and this big spike came out of his butt.
I didn't get any of that.
Wait, nobody can see me, so that's good.
I can fix that.
Oh. Uh-oh. Okay, save.
Okay, so I think I need to rock him forward a little bit. So I'm actually going to select all this stuff aside from his legs. I'm going to put the cursor right there. I'm going to tilt him forward a little bit. So it looks like he's sneaking around. He's a sneaky little guy.
Sneak, mix sneakers. I don't know, don't ask.
Okay, I think his tail. Oops. Oh, tail. So I think the tail needs to be bigger now, actually.
fun. Just laughing at my pug.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that thing's gonna be awesome when it's done. Okay, so now I think I actually need the tip of the tail to be bigger. So this is when I would use the inflate brush, because the move brush would be really hard to do this way. I mean, you can do it, but inflate's just easier. So I'm just gonna like I start. So my brush strokes with the pen, I tend to go lighter at the beginning and stronger at the end. I don't know why, I just do. So I start down towards the base of the tail, and then I just kind of follow the curvature of the tail up, and that gives me a nice gradual increase in size.
Sounds. Uh-oh, what happened to my tail? Oh, I turned it off.
I hate making even cartoon hands.
Yeah. Yeah, hands are tough. So thank you, Uncle Jesse, for picking a character that did not have hands. Okay, so at this point, like, I think I'm pretty much done with the model. There's some more tweaking I could do for sure. I'm not super happy with the legs, but I think I'm gonna call it at this point. But I'm not quite done because he's still pretty segmented. So this is the point where I'm like, I need to combine everything and export it for 3D printing and stuff like that.
Right.
And we've got all these different subtools. So there's lots of ways you can combine things. You could just merge everything and then Dynamesh it, but you tend to lose some detail doing that. I prefer to use Boolean, which is actually pretty nice. So I'm going to separate things. I'm going to keep his head and his body separate for the time being. So for right now, I'm just going to hide his head and just everything involving the head. So now I've just got his body. And basically what I'm going to do is just, I'm going to click this live Boolean thing up in the top left. So that turns Boolean on. And I'm not subtracting anything or doing anything weird. I'm just combining things, so I don't need to worry about any of that. And then I just come down to this Boolean tab underneath the subtool palette. And there's a make Boolean mesh. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And it will do some processing. Union remeshing in progress. And if you have a really complex model that has a ton of polygons, this process can take forever and can actually crash ZBrush, so always save before you do it. But this one's pretty simple. So that is done. And now what you need to do is insert it. So just like we did with the Z-sphere thing, you come to insert, and it's in this quick pick up here. So I'll click that, and now I have a new little subtool that is just the body. And I can go through and hide all these other things I don't need anymore. And now I just have this. So what I'm actually going to do, and Booleaning does actually like combine all of the triangles and stuff. So like if I were to smooth out the shoulder, hold on, let me make sure I have it selected. There we go. You can see that there is geometry holding it together. And that's actually what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go through and sort of clean up all these connection points, because Ori does not look segmented. Looks a lot smoother. And feel free to Dynamesh if you think you need a little bit more. And since we kind of have the shape that we need, we can go a bit higher in the Dynamesh and not worry too much about it.
Hey, Uncle Jesse's in the chat now.
Uncle Jesse, we picked your model, or your suggestion.
Garrett did a fantastic job. Mike's doing a pretty good job, and I killed it. Like, literally killed it. Not killed it as in a good way. So, okay, I hid all my head parts, like you said. How'd you join it?
Yep.
Or
Okay, so top left, there's a live Boolean button. Click that.
Left. Oh.
Right next to, yeah, right there. So now you have just what you want selected or visible, I suppose.
Visible,
and
yep.
So now scroll down in that subtool palette, and there's a Boolean thing down there. Click that, and then click Make Boolean Mesh.
Ah, okay.
So, and give it a second to process up there in the top left.
Yep.
And then when that's done, just insert it into your subtool stack, like we did with the Z-spheres.
I must have clicked it twice to have two of them.
And it'll be the very last one, so probably not that one, although maybe. There was one below it, but if that one seems right, then that's probably right.
So delete that one. Okay. Insert. Okay, yeah, so there's merged PM 3ds, merged PM.
So on the,
mesh.
Yep, that one I think is the one you want.
It's got all kinds of little dots all over it. Oh, it's because they're.
So that just means that there's two meshes taking up that same space.
Very
so go ahead and hide all the other ones, and those should go away.
I guess there's probably a like one-click hide everything else option, isn't there?
Whoa.
There is. If you shift click on the eye, like so, if you're on that subtool, there's an eye to the right of it. If you hold shift and click on that eye, it should hide everything else.
Got it.
So I'm just basically going through and smoothing out all of these different creased areas. And then I'm going to give it another Dynamesh. Actually, before I Dynamesh, I'm going to inflate these shoulder areas because they're not coming together quite how I wanted. So I'm just going to give it a little inflate around there. That should look good. So I'll go ahead and Dynamesh. And then smooth more. There we go. That's looking better. And my computer is not very happy with me right now.
Really? What are you up to?
I'm just on ZBrush.
No, but like, how many?
Oh, how many polygons? 1.2 million.
Seriously?
Yeah.
My computer, I have up to.
Well, it's not slowing down. It's just I can hear my fans going crazy.
Oh, I was gonna say I have a laptop, and all my stuff is usually at like 12 million.
Yeah. No, it's a. Oh god damn it! God, that picture screws me every time.
Yeah.
I'm not.
You never have a picture on there.
509 polygon total points.
How many?
509.
1,000. That's pretty good.
Oh wait, no. Yeah, 509,000. Yeah. Mine's also less detailed than yours.
Okay. That's the body. Now I'm going to bring back the head, and I'm going to Boolean all that together too. Okay, make sure the body is hidden. Okay, and then my Boolean, make Boolean mesh.
So how do you rearrange subtools?
Well, one, you can create folders. There's like a new folder button. Oh, you don't have it. I think it might be in 2019.
Yeah.
You can create folders, but ZBrush folders work really weird. So you have to be careful with those too. But mostly I just move things that I don't need to like the top of the stack or the bottom of the stack. And I just know that, you know, certain things above there I don't need anymore. And you do that with the little arrows right to the bottom of that list.
Yeah.
So like the regular arrows are just like move one up or move one down. And then the curved arrows are like move to top or move to bottom,
Oh.
I believe.
Oh. Okay. The curved arrows are what moves it up and down. Up and down selects the tools.
Oh, okay. So if you hold shift and click those curved arrows, it'll move to the top or the bottom.
There we go. So now I got a merged body and a merged head.
Okay, so now I've got the head all merged up. So I'm gonna go through carefully and smooth out these little wing thingies.
I thought when you put stuff in a folder, they all acted together. I guess not.
What's that?
I thought that when you put stuff in a folder now that they would all act together. But I guess not.
They kind of do. It's weird. Like some things will treat them as one thing and other things won't. I don't know. It's I have not had much luck using them. I'll just leave it at that. Like I mostly only use them for things that I don't need anymore. Like subtools that I just used for a second and threw away, but I keep around in case I need to go back. But I usually don't.
I'm gonna say I use the folders for like when I'm doing my color models.
Yeah.
I'm keeping them split up. I do it. I use them like that.
All right. Well, and with that, I think I'm done. So I'm gonna go ahead and save. And then I guess I could go through my process of actually exporting it for 3D printing. Because I know that's something, because ZBrush is not a 3D printing friendly program at all. So that could be kind of helpful. So now I've got two parts here, the head and the body. And in the final 3D print, I think I would want those to be part of the same thing. Like this isn't a character that would warrant or benefit from splitting it, I don't think. Unless you wanted to print it bigger, but I don't think that's necessary here. So I'm just gonna Boolean these two together and wait for that to process.
While yours is processing, Garrett, I got a question for you. As far as
Yeah.
like, if I were, say I did want to split this body and head separate, okay?
Yeah.
So right now, if you watch, see my neck, how it's like or the upper part of the body is really tall.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like way up into the head.
Yeah.
So how do you clean that up? Like create a clean cut at the head? Do you just do the Boolean subtract for the two objects? Yes. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, and I can kind of demonstrate that here. So I've got live Boolean on, and the body is above the head, which is important. So the body is what I want to stay there, and then if I click the head, there's on the subtool itself, there's two little dots that are both, or one's gray, one's white, and that means combine. The one to the right of it, if you click that, one is white, and then the other one's dark gray. It kind of looks like an eclipse is starting to happen.
Yep.
and that means subtract. So, and as you can see over here in the view, since I have live Boolean on in the top left, you can see that I have the head is being cut from the body. Because if I take off the head, like turn that off, you can see that my body has a little protrusion up there. But if I turn the head back on, it just cuts that off. So at this point, I would just click make Boolean mesh again, insert it, and then I'd keep the head the way that I had it, and then take this new body that I'd created, export them separately, and they should fit together relatively well. A lot of 3D prints, you'll need like tolerances and stuff like that because 3D printing isn't super exact down to that level, but it's very, very hard to get anything precise in ZBrush. So you kind of just have to roll with what you got.
That has been one of my biggest hurdles with ZBrush is doing CAD is easy because you have dimensions for everything, or at least some kind of constraints. ZBrush, there's nothing, at least not that I've found.
So ZBrush, they kind of use their own units. You can basically mess with the export scale to sort of fake real units, because I mean, if there's any sort of units at all, you can match those to real world units,
Okay.
And so you can set the export scale and you can kind of know what measurements you're working with, but there's not a lot of places in ZBrush that you can just type in a number and have it offset by that exact amount. So it's very difficult. If you were stubborn and adamant enough, you could make it work, but it's just, in my mind, it's not worth it. Okay, so this is my finished model. I've got it all in one subtool. The only problem now is that I have, like if I look up in the top left, the active points, I have almost 800,000 points. So if I were to export that now, it would be fine, but that's a really, really big file. And a lot of people will get mad because, it takes
good look with your slicer even actually slicing.
Yeah. So it takes a long time to download. It takes a long time to process in the slicer. And basically all of the triangles that are on here are not needed. It's just when you're working with ZBrush, you need lots of triangles to move things around. And you can actually see all of quads. They work with quads here. If you turn on polyfill, you can see all different quads. So if you're back here, it looks like this crazy mesh, just craziness. So if I zoom in really, really close, you can see all of the individual triangles, or quads, sorry. And you can just see how absolutely crazy that is, and all the weird stitching that it had to put like the other parts together, So you do not need all those triangles for this model to look this good. Or quads. I keep saying triangles. I warned you I would do that. And so that's what makes up the 800,000 there. So we need to get that down. And the way that we do that is, I'll mention again that I have one subtool here that I'm working with. I come up to the Z plugin, and the process is basically called decimation. So I click the decimation master, and this percentage of decimation is about what we need. So like if you have 1,000,000 polygons and you have 20%, it will land you around 200,000 polygons. Makes sense, right? So it's a percentage of what you want to go to. You can definitely go too low, and you basically just have to decimate and then inspect your model. And it's usually what you want to do is go into like the areas with the most detail, because those will be the areas that will be impacted the most. So you just decimate and then check the detail areas. And if the detail that you had there is gone to a point that you can't accept that, undo and then try a higher poly count. So like right here, and this model doesn't have a lot of small detail, so I don't expect any problems. I could probably even go down to about 10% and it would be fine. In fact, I'll try that. So I click on it right there and you can see that it's highlighted red. When it's highlighted red, I can type in 10 and then hit enter, and it'll move it down to 10% of decimation. And that's saving. So give it a few minutes. There we go. Oh, only 6 seconds. So it's at 10%, and that will land me somewhere around 80,000 polygons, which is really, really good. So I'm going to go pre-process current, which it basically just does a bunch of calculations and stuff on the current model. So it says computing, please wait up in the top left. So just give it a second. The percentage of decimation there is the one you want to change.
You said we could probably
Most of my models I usually do around 15 to 20%, but this one's a little bit simpler. And then you hit pre-process current. So then once that computing is done, you just open that back up and don't change any of the sliders, just hit decimate current. And all of your color information that you had there will be gone, but you'll notice that I am down to 78,000 quads. Or points, I guess that's points up there. And so now I can zoom into the model, and if I turn on polyfill, you can see that one, it looks a lot crazier because one, they are now converted to triangles. They are no longer quads, which is fine. That's how STLs are anyway. I believe they're all triangles in there. So it'll complain if there's quads and stuff like that. And it looks way messier, but there's a lot less of them now. So don't pay attention to the actual topology. Basically just look at your model, zoom in really close, and you can kind of see the texture there.
Yep.
But the detailed areas like the nose and the eyes where those meet, like these creases here, still look really, really good. So I could probably even go lower if I wanted to, but 80,000 points is really, really good. Like this file won't be that big. It'll load quickly in slicers. So I think that's it for me. And I just export now. So I come up here and click export and then just export. That brings up a thing to export it as an OBJ. And I'll type in the name. I'll just type Ori. And that's pretty much the end of what I do in ZBrush. Now, if like say that it went down too far and your detail was gone, you can just hit Control Z and undo what you did. And then go back up to Z plugin, change the slider, pre-process again, and then decimate again. And sometimes you just have to do that a couple of times to find the sweet spot. Most of the time, I do not like any of my individual OBJ files or subtools or anything like that. I try not to let it get above 200,000 triangles or points, I guess, because that's when it starts to just become unreasonable file size and slicer, that type of stuff. So I always try to keep it sub 200,000. There are some times where I have like a really detailed model. Like I think Godzilla I might have let get up there because he had like a lot of yeah. So those models had a ton of texture in there that you want to keep. And so you just basically have to find that sweet spot of where your poly count isn't too high, but you're still keeping the detail that you have there. But something like this, just decimate the crap out of it. So then from here, basically what I'll do is, I know Simplify 3D doesn't have a lot of favor left with the community, but for some reason I still find that the easiest thing to just like pop open and move models around.
Sure.
I know Chelsea would disagree because she uses Prusa Slicer, which I have no experience with. Not because I have anything against it. It's just because Chelsea does all of our printing now, so she does all the slicing. So that's the only reason. And this is what I used back in the day. So please forgive the use of Simplify and substitute with your own slicer. But I'll basically come up, File, Import Models. And I've got ori.obj here. So I open that up, and it says that it appears to be extremely small because everything you export from ZBrush, unless you've messed with the export settings, comes in super, super small. And actually, I'll just show you. I'll click no. If you click yes, basically all it does is it scales it up ridiculously. So I'll hit no, and you can just see how absolutely tiny it is down there. So I'm just going to double click on it, and I'll scale it up considerably. And you usually need to rotate things because if you're not familiar with 3D software outside of the 3D printing realm, Y is not usually like the Y and the Z axis are flipped in 3D printing compared to normal 3D space things, because in 3D printing, the bed is your X and Y, just because that's kind of how it makes sense. And then the Z is the up and down. But in video games and like movies and stuff like that, and in math in the real world, X is left to right, Y is up and down, and Z is in and out. And 3D printing is just not like that. So that's why when I exported it here, the model is flipped. So basically what I need to do is come here on the X and rotate it 270 degrees. And boom, it's the right way up. So now, in order to make it print a little better, I usually like to shave off some of the foot and make it flat. ZBrush doesn't do real good with keeping things perfectly flat. So, because like anytime you dynamesh or anytime you decimate or remesh or anything that actually affects the topology of a model, or even just touch it with a brush, it is no longer perfectly flat. So I usually do those types of things outside of ZBrush. So I'll just go ahead and export this once I've got it the right size and everything. So now I've got an ori.stl. And I'll open up Mesh Mixer. And I believe you can do this in Prusa Slicer, right? The slice things. Like cut off the bottom and make it flat.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, not like, of course you can slice things.
I'm just like, I don't know.
So then I'll import that ori.stl. And like I said, you can do this in whatever program you want. This is just the one I tend to use. And then I just plane cut. I'll bring it down to the feet here to give it a flat surface to stand on. And this one is like they're very, very small points of contact down there. So like printing this FDM, it would have a pretty hard time printing this. So you might want to create some sort of like base or something for them to stand on that it can be attached to, because and I can guarantee that wouldn't stand up on its own. It's probably pretty front heavy with the arm and the head out here like this. So it'd probably tip forward. So you definitely need some sort of base or something like that. But if you're printing with SLA or resin, you know, it'll be perfectly fine. So then I export it back out and I just name it the same thing. I overwrite that file. Let it process. Close that out. And then I just re-import it to make sure that everything is normal, I guess. And you can see that it is. And if you want, you can go through and slice it and check, because sometimes there will be little like internal bubbles and stuff. Like when you're, especially if you're doing a lot of Booleaning, subtracting and stuff like that, or if you're just not very experienced in this type of thing, you can kind of get some weird things in your mesh. So if you slice it, here, I'll just do it real quick. I'll prepare print. So then you just like step through it. And a good thing is just like look inside and make sure that there's no weird geometry that's on the inside of your model. And this one's fine, just because I've done this enough that I know how to avoid those type of things. But you may need to run it through some sort of mesh fixing program. And that's actually a good habit to get into anyway, because that decimation process and basically anything that ZBrush does, it really kind of mutilates the model, because normal things that you use ZBrush for, you don't really need a clean output model, because like in video games and movies, they export it out and then they recreate the mesh on top of it. So it's just not really built for that type of thing. But in 3D printing, we just take the full poly model basically. So a lot of times there's triangles that might be backwards or missing triangles even. And I'm not even up to date on which programs and stuff are the best for that.
I think it's still.
I use
Slicer does it.
Prusa Slicer. So what I'm really learning here is that Prusa Slicer is your one-stop shop for exporting. What I use is 3D Builder. It comes with Windows. and it's like actually super nice. Like I wouldn't have expected it at all, but it's amazing at processing objects, and like its algorithms are really, really nice. So you can just bring it in here, and I guarantee it'll tell me there's an issue with it. I'll import. No?
I was gonna say you.
Holy cow!
Some of mine are. I get really lucky, and there's no.
I was gonna say I think this is the first model I've ever created that did not have an issue when I brought it in.
Because you did such
So-
a great job.
What's that?
Because you did such a great job.
Yep, it was entirely me and no luck involved at all. It's pure skill. But yeah, so that's, and this actually, it makes things look pretty nice in here. So like the whatever rendering they have on the lighting, it just looks pretty cool. So that's my entire process for modeling.
Cool. So
Three easy steps.
3 easy steps: model it, fix it, print
Right.
it. So I do have a question. So when we
Yes.
were doing the decimation,
Mm-hmm.
it only took mine. What was it? It was like 500 and something. Hang on, I'm finding out. I'm going back. 551.
Yep.
And when I did a 10% decimation, it took it down to 513,000
Are you looking at active points or total points?
total points.
Okay, so total is all of your subtools.
Oh, okay. Active. Oh, okay. Active went from 41 down to 4. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. I was trying to figure out what I was doing wrong while you were explaining it.
Yeah, it's just that it's the total points.
Cool. Yeah, I was actually, like you said, with 3D Builder, I was really impressed with how 3D Builder handles everything.
Yeah, I was too, and especially since it's just a weird thing that it seemed like an afterthought that they threw it into Windows 10, but
Yeah. Like you were saying about doing your rotating and like chopping off the bottom to make it flat and all that in Simplify, you can actually do pretty much, you could make 3D Builder your one-stop shop there as well.
Really, I'll have to look into that.
So, Garrett, do you want to stop your screen share and I'll show Mike
Definitely.
and my's progress on ours? And of course, I got to shrink that. Okay. There you go. So there's Mike's on the top left, mine on the top right.
Sure. Just as I changed it and they all went the wrong color.
Of course. Mine's a little bit more blocky and a little rougher, but I'm actually kind of happy with that. That came out half decent.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's, I think, in the beginning, especially, quantity is way more important than quality. Just like take a model through the process and just model a bunch of them, and you'll get better as you go. And then when you actually decide to apply yourself to a model in the future, you'll be surprised at how much progress you've made.
Well, that's what really amazed me. So sitting here doing this with you, I've watched you do ZBrush before, back when you guys did your model along live streams. I've watched you do it, and I never really paid close attention to what tools you were using. But the fact that you pretty much did this whole thing with just the move tool.
Yeah. And like I said, I think I'm alone in that, but it works for me. So
I don't think you're.
Yeah, but look at that. It looks good.
Yeah.
I mean, cool. So there's the two that Mike and I did there at the top of your screens, with the assistance of Garrett's lesson.
did anyone submit theirs that they're working on?
Let me check. Of course, I don't have the Friday Night Hangout signed in on my desktop. All right, Mike posted his.
I did that a while ago.
Oh, that looks really good, Mike.
It's all right. I know how rusty I am now.
Has it been a while since you've modeled?
Oh God, yeah, months.
Mm.
Since they spent this long doing it, like 2 or 3 hours, yeah. I'll pull it up and play with it once in a while when I'm angry. It's a good stress reliever for me.
Right.
I generally do the mad. What were the thing? I know my kids had them. They were like a ball. They had a scary face on it. I do those a lot.
Yeah, those are fun.
I never save them. I just mess around.
Looks like it was just me and Mike. If you did, if you guys were, or later down the road, you follow along with this stream, post a screenshot or even the final 3D print if you decide to print it, and tag at F3DPCH and at ChaosCoreTech so we can see what you guys did.
Definitely.
So what did you think of that, Mike?
I think I need to do more of this. I think Garrett needs to do more of this.
Absolutely.
I would agree, actually.
It's like old times, like a flashback.
Yep.
It's a good thing.
Cool. Very cool. I think that went well for the first model along. If you guys like this, let us know. We may do the same thing with Fusion 360, Blender. There's some other programs out there. Those are just the primary ones that I have access to. I mean, of course, you can do some modeling in Mesh Mixer. There's Sculptress. Sculptress, I think the only problem there is you have to have Sculptress Pro to export for 3D printing, I think. Or am I wrong?
I think you could just export an OBJ from regular Sculptress and just convert it.
Maybe it was to get STL, but yeah, if you can export OBJ, you're good. Cool. Thank you, Garrett.
Well, thanks for having me.
That was one of the longest
Thank you very much.
in a long time. All right. Well, does anybody from the chat have any questions for Garrett? I know we didn't get to pay close attention to the chat this time, and I think that's kind of going to be a little bit of the nature of the model alongs. If we do something like Fusion that I'm more familiar with, I can pay attention to the chat a little bit longer too. But if you do have questions for Garrett, go ahead and get them in now. We'll give about like 5 minutes to get questions in, if that's all right with you guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see. TK 3D prints. Only thing I have problems with it and with ZBrush is it hates to decimate models from VR. Oh, that's coming from VR into ZBrush.
Yeah. I found that pretty much bringing anything from outside ZBrush into ZBrush, it has a lot of issues with.
I was using ZBrush trying to cut up printed solid Sur layers a lot for before Canvas or Mosaic came out with the paint feature in Canvas.
Right.
I was trying to cut up Sur layers a lot, and I was learning a lot on how to split things, but I cannot figure out the lasso tools where you, not the mask, but the select tool.
Right.
I would watch tutorials. It would say, you circle the part you want to keep with the lasso tool, and everything else will disappear. You can split that off then. And every time I do it, it would be the opposite thing I wanted selected. So I'm like, okay,
right.
Well, devil's advocate. I'd circle the other part that I didn't want, and the part that I wanted would disappear. Like, really?
Yeah, it's one of those things that they just ZBrush, you have to do it the exact way that ZBrush wants you to do it.
Right.
And if you don't, it's impossible. So.
Yeah. Robbie Mack asked, "Do you do commissions?"
Sometimes, I would say yes. It would either be me or Chelsea, but Chelsea, I would argue, is pretty much better than me at organic stuff at this point. So,
if somebody wanted to reach out to you guys for commissions, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
Honestly, you can message Chelsea on Twitter. You could message me too, but Chelsea is fat. I was gonna say she's way faster at answering and stuff like that. So hers is at Chels, CHELS, and then the letter C, Chelsea 423. I'll type that in the chat.
It's just like my friend here.
Twitter.com/ Chelsea 423. I believe that's it.
It's like my YouTube name.
Okay.
So I just
Yeah, just like that. So you could direct message her, or you could just email us at ChaosCoreTech@gmail.com and just give us some details about what you're wanting done, and if there's any like specific time frame or something like that. I can't guarantee we'll say yes, but we'll respond. And with a price and stuff like that, we'll just basically give you a quote for what we think it would be.
Cool. I'm not seeing any more questions. I think you kind of answered some of the questions that I did see pop up through the night as you were going along. So I think we got most of them covered.
Okay, good deal.
How can everybody find you, Garrett? Find you, follow ChaosCoreTech, Chelsea. How can they see what you guys are up to?
Well, YouTube is probably the biggest one, just ChaosCoreTech on YouTube. Well, my thing that I just typed in chat with there, that's my channel. It's where we post all of our videos. We do have a Patreon, ChaosCoreTech there as well. I'm ChaosCoreTech on everything. I don't really have anything on Instagram yet. I need to get that back up and going. I have a Twitter. I don't post very often. I'm not very good at the social thing, if you couldn't tell. Chelsea's way better, so I would follow her if you're interested in what we're doing. The YouTube channel, we do actually post there, but Chelsea posts. She posts progress pictures. She keeps up with the community. She's really good about that. So the Twitter that I posted there, you can follow Chelsea there.
Awesome. You have Patreon. What all do you guys do on your Patreon?
Right now, we mostly have models. We have a couple of different tiers. The $5 tier is most of our models that we created to be 3D printed. They're usually just we have some that are like single prints, and then they have some that are like multi-material prints.
Yeah.
Chelsea's making a cringe face.
What?
They're 3D printable files, aren't they? Are they not?
It drives me nuts when you say they're meant to be 3D printed. Everything we make is meant to be 3D printed.
But it makes more sense when I get to my $10 tier.
Easy to print.
Yes, easy to print. Okay, but there's multi-material, there's single material, there's lots of stuff there.
Right.
Lots of cool models. And then our $10 tier is more D&D related. There's some terrain, there's some miniatures.
The higher detail models.
Yeah, higher detail models are there. And we do have a $15 tier that's like tutorials and stuff like that. But like I mentioned earlier, we might be reconsidering that one. So there's nothing there yet. But models, we got lots of models.
Awesome.
And they're all original models.
They are. They're all original models.
Creating copyright character models and putting them up on Patreon is just the same as selling them.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
So, it is.
So we're trying to go about it the legal way.
Yeah.
And not put any sort of copyright characters on our Patreon.
Yep.
So
that's the easier way to go too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we seem to have a higher profile than some of the other modelers.
Yeah.
So we get smacked down a lot quicker when we do copyrighted things.
So it's of course we would get a lot more attention probably.
Yeah.
Doing copyright characters.
Sure make a lot of money doing that, but it's not the right thing to do. So we don't.
And then Chelsea also has an Etsy shop as well, correct?
Yeah, I haven't really kept up on it because it really wasn't going anywhere.
Yep.
But I'm trying to come up with something with that. Nobody seems to want earrings, so I'll think of something.
Yeah.
You're not alone on that one, Chelsea. Not specifically the earrings, but yeah, I'm like ours. I kind of took everything off right now.
Yeah, it's like I keep paying for posts to keep them up, but then it runs out and I end up paying for them again, without selling anything. So I'm like, I think it's just hard to grow any sort of jewelry or anything on Etsy alone. So
yeah, almost anything we do for profit, it seems like local is where it's at.
And I think that's what I'm going to attempt a little more too. So, but I can always post them and people can buy them through other means.
Also, we will be posting this model if you want to download it. Probably Gumroad for free.
Yeah, it'll be for free. Since
Yeah.
It's not ours.
But we'll probably tweet out the link once we have it posted and everything. So if you're interested.
So follow Chelsea. Garrett dropped her link in the chat already. Twitter.com/Chelsea, CHELSC 423, and ChaosCoreTech on Twitter, to be able to see when. What was the name of it? Of this one?
This character?
Yeah,
Ori.
Ori. To see when the model of Ori that we created tonight drops. And I'll probably end up just throwing mine up too on the F3D PCH website. You can download for free too. Not that that mine's great, but hey, what the heck?
I was gonna say, you have a 3D model, might as well share it, right?
Yep, you got it. So thank you, Chelsea and Garrett, for coming on. Mike, do you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Everywhere is NLTMW, NLTMW.com. That's about it.
All right. Mike is very active on Twitter as well, along with the rest of the community. So,
And just a super cool dude.
yes, he is.
Yeah.
Mike,
Blushing.
thanks for coming on tonight and modeling along. I knew you had ZBrush, and I know you've learned from Garrett and Chelsea in the past. They did the model alongs and the live streams of modeling. I know you were always in the background modeling something along with them. They're trying to keep up or doing something similar at least.
I try.
So I knew you were a good prime person to co-host and come on and do it with me.
No problem. Thanks for letting me come in.
So for the Friday night 3D printing community hangouts, you can follow us. Easiest thing is twitter.com/F3DPCH or F3DPCH.com. Takes you to the website. The website does need revamped again. We are not, just as an update, we are not going to be doing a bi-month or a monthly, yeah, I had to think of my words, open hangout stream scheduled anymore. We may do them from time to time, but I was trying to do one a month because it was requested. We are moving away from that. These model alongs kind of were that first step in moving away from that a little bit. Just on the part of scheduling. This way, I know I have a guest scheduled, and we don't last minute have to cancel because people can't make it and things like that. So, I mean, that could still happen, but a little bit less likely. So, the next F3D PCH is March 27th at 10 p.m. Eastern. And of course, there's Patreon as well, which is my Patreon, patreon.com/howidoit for my YouTube channel. That right now, all the money on Patreon goes to actually pay for the F3D PCH website, domain, Zoom for live streaming. Basically, all the money on there is going to support F3D PCH. So if you'd like to support the streams, you can join Patreon there. Mike is a patron on there, and as he knows, the Meet the Maker streams, I've got a whole bunch of feelers out there, and I'm waiting on dates right now. But they are coming. So that is a Patreon only live stream. Same format that we do here on F3D PCH on the public live streams, but those are pre-recorded with the patrons active in the chat and posted at a later date. So they are coming. I'm just waiting on dates to line up. So with that said, thank you everybody in the chat who joined tonight and interacted. Thank you, Uncle Jesse, for picking the model out tonight. We had a lot of fun doing it. It was something totally organic that showed off the techniques that Garrett uses very, very easily. So thank you, Garrett. Thank you, Mike. And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Thanks, bye.